disappeared.
She'll come back. She's just getting a breast augmentation. That's probably it.
And in greater numbers.
Yeah, that's us.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner.
Hey, horror fans! Once again, it is the Horror Miser Monty G.
Hey, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is Jen, and Velvet's with me.
Hey guys, welcome to the Trash Picture Show.
Grab some popcorn and take your seat at Trivial Theater.
Remember that horror rules. Ha 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 ha. Oh, Sean's still mute.
Oh, there we go.
There he goes.
May I be the one to say that new opening is fantastic? By the way.
Ah, cheers.
Oh, yes. Let's thank Triv for the new opening.
Ah,
He
cheers,
knocked it.
guys.
Knocked it out of the park.
I appreciate the opportunity
that was
to do
the
it.
debut of. That's the debut of a new Horror Hangout opening created by Trivial Theater.
It was awesome, Triv. It was
Fantastic.
awesome.
Welcome,
Fantastic
everyone.
Hello.
So, welcome to the Horror Hangout live stream, folks. And we have a special guest this week, TYTD Reviews, in the house.
Woohoo.
And
Pleasure to
And,
be here. Pleasure to be here.
We
Thank
got
you.
our usual suspects. Welcome. So we have the Horror Miser Monty G in the house. We have Velvet and Jen from Jen's Reviews from the Grave.
I have Happy Meal tits tonight, people.
Gonna be one of those. Gonna be one
Yes,
of
literal
those.
can.
We
Literal
have
can.
the trap.
The pre-show conversation of
And
how
we
to
are
keep
talking
things going
all
was
about
phenomenal.
today. We are talking about some Hammer horror. And in particular, we are talking about the Hammer Frankenstein series.
Excited to talk about it.
yes.
Mhm.
Oh yes.
Very much so.
Classics.
Including one of the films that put Hammer. I think my internet sucks right now.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a delay.
Yeah.
There's a bit of lag.
We still love you.
Still good.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. How about now?
Can you hear us?
You hear me
Possible.
okay? It's
Can you
not
hear us
delayed.
okay?
I mean, I can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems a
Am
little
I
bit
on
better.
time or is there an echo?
No,
I think
no
it's
echo.
about
Right,
time.
no
I think
echo.
we're okay now.
Okay, we're good now. We're
Hey!
good.
I think we're all back.
Thanks for
Hey!
bearing with me. All right, so yeah, we are talking about the Hammer Frankenstein series today. Going to be an epic show. Can't wait to talk all about Hammer Frankenstein.
Woohoo.
Yay. Dead people coming
So
back to
to
life
start
and
things
having sex
I
with them.
want to
No.
No, that's something different.
You watched the wrong movies.
Damn
Yeah.
it.
You watched Flesh for Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Jen, Wankenstein was not a Hammer
Ah,
horror
right.
movie.
Ah, the classic.
But I stayed up till 3 watching it.
You know, Dan and I were talking. They don't have there's no asylum movie that's Fartenstein. I feel like that.
Which I thought was very astounding, honestly. You would have thought some lo-fi SOB filmmaker would have jumped on that by now, but
Okay, we got Thembo Cinema in the chat. We got Kurt Smith.
Woohoo!
Joe Goes Over.
Yay!
Woohoo.
Welcome, everybody. So to kick things off, I wanted to ask you guys a few questions to get your thoughts before I get into talking about each film individually. So the first thing I wanted to ask you guys is, who is your favorite monster in the Hammer Frankenstein series? So let's kick that off with our guest this month, TYTD Reviews, who I'm told is a Hammer expert.
Well, one does dabble, one does dabble.
He is from England, so he should know about Hammer.
Me, English? Oh, no, never.
Okay.
He's like you, Marty.
The Death Flare. The Death Flare. You done set him off.
Marty, it's all right. My family's from Mayo.
Well, that's all right. That's okay. That's okay.
So I went through all of these films, and I wasn't entirely sure whether the question meant like if I was talking purely looks or if I was talking purely from in terms of like story. So in terms of which monster I liked the look of the most, I think I'd probably go for the Horror of Frankenstein look. Dave Prowse. I thought it was a very menacing looking design, and it sort of manages to look very sort of scarred and nasty, but it doesn't go goopy like the Evil of Frankenstein monster. If you were talking in terms of story, though, I think I'd probably go for the Revenge monster, because I think that it's a bit more of a nuanced character. There's a bit more complexity behind it. It's not just your sort of standard lumbering character. You know, he has sort of thoughts and feelings and is able to kind of rationalize his situation a bit more. I mean, obviously, once he gets hit on the head, he goes a bit nuts, but otherwise, he's a bit more of a rounded figure compared to the other creatures in the series. So they'd be the two I'd pick, depending on which one you want to look at.
Good answers.
Great point. How about you, Velvet and Jen?
You or me?
I'll go. If we're talking about design, I will have to go the Evil of Frankenstein, because I do like, it all being runny and gushy. Yeah, I like that. I don't know why. It's just something about that really appeals to me. I don't know why. I like it. I like the kind of dark. You know me. I like extreme horror, so I like the more fucked up we look, the better we look. What about you?
If we're going just design wise, honestly, probably the original Christopher Lee one from the very first film.
How come?
I don't know. I just like it's a very simple design, but it's very classic. But it also just stands out drastically diopposed to, say, the Universal design on purpose, so they didn't get sued. But I really think it kind of has a very distinct feel all of its own, and kind of more in tradition to the original Shelley novel, as opposed to the more typical one you would imagine from like pop culture and stuff.
It also subverts your expectations, because you're going in, you're thinking Universal, and you're getting, for the first time.
Yeah, for sure, the reveal's really cool, and just for story wise, also, yeah, Revenge of Frankenstein I think is probably the best one from a story side of things.
Yes, I didn't say that, but yeah, Revenge is also. How'd you know?
Just a good one.
Great minds.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Hey, Jen, you're overflowing there.
I hope I don't get you canceled. Oh dear.
I was gonna say you're gonna poke somebody's face out with that. Forget about
no,
that.
yes.
Your own face.
Jesus Christ.
Marty, the whole internet saw my dirty pillows.
How about you, Monty G? What's your favorite monster in the series?
Yeah, I would go a little bit with Dan, especially with Revenge of the Frankenstein. But for me, it's obviously the Curse of Frankenstein, because it kind of got me almost everyone introduced to Hammer horror, because eventually, because of everyone was so used to seeing what Universal did with Mary Shelley's novel, and everyone loved Boris Karloff and his makeup as Dracula. I mean, getting confused, as the Frankenstein's monster. But what Hammer did with both Peter Cushing's Victor Frankenstein and obviously Christopher Lee's performance as the monster, take upon the Frankenstein's monster and the whole Universal monsters that they eventually led to the creation of their version of Dracula and the Mummy, and eventually, bang, here comes Hammer Horror. So always going to be Curse of Frankenstein for me.
Good choice.
Very good choice.
How about you, Marty?
It's a toss-up. I was originally going to go with Prowse because it's Darth Vader, but then I was like, design-wise, I think the coolest one for me, and this might be blasphemy, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. I like how patchwork that motherfucker is. It's just like there's almost something simian about him. I don't know what it is. This kind of Hulk like ape kind of creature. I think that's cool. If you put a gun to my head at a push, probably Curse of Frankenstein as well, because Christopher Lee looking like this gnarly fucking zombie is pretty cool, especially when it gets shot in the face. I'm like, Jesus fuck. But no, I think at a push, definitely Frankenstein and the Creature from Hell.
Certainly the most monstrous. I mean, he's nothing like any version of Frankenstein's monster that I've ever seen, that's for sure.
Agreed.
So next thing I wanted to ask you guys is, what do you feel stands out about the Hammer Frankenstein series as opposed to the Universal series, or basically any other adaptation of Frankenstein? How do you feel Hammer what do you think they do differently? How do you think they stand out from the rest? TYTD Reviews.
So I mean, for me, I think the big thing about Hammer that kind of stands it out from anybody else is just the variety. Every single of one of these Frankenstein films has kind of similar plot beats, but the drive behind each of the creatures is very unique and distinct. Some are motivated by revenge, some don't want to exist, but they're all kind of given life, and it sort of plays out that way. I think as well, the sort of budget and aesthetic is a factor as well. Obviously with the Universal movies, they were very big budget, very sort of intense on stylization, very intense lighting, whereas with Hammer, they sort of really embrace that more Victoriana Gothic horror vibe, which, it became so synonymous with Hammer through that sort of period of time. I think they really kind of owned it ultimately through the 60s and 70s. I think as well, another thing that kind of plays more to Hammer's favor is the sort of, for lack of a better descriptive, the British sense of humor. They do a lot of kind
definitely.
of they do a lot of kind of sort of subtle wordplay, or less emphasis on kind of visual comedy, which I know that the Universal films preferenced a bit more. But I think also it helped as well that Hammer came after Universal, because it meant that they could be a little bit more nastier, gorier, bloodier. They just sort of were able to amp everything up significantly more, whereas Universal was kind of tethered a little bit more because of sort of regulations in cinema at the time. So often imitated, but rarely quite captured.
Yeah, because you could definitely see the difference of comedy aspect when you see Abbott Costello meet Frankenstein, as opposed to the was that parody? Was that Revenge of Frankenstein? I got that right.
I think so.
Oh,
The parody would
might
be
be.
Young Frankenstein, wouldn't it?
yeah.
No, not that one. That's an American. one.
Within Hammer's movies?
So I forgot which
What
one.
would it be? One of the Carry On ones?
I
Monty?
suppose you could say that Horror of Frankenstein maybe was a little bit of a.
Mm-hmm.
It had the most humor out of any of the.
Yeah, the most humor, but I'm just saying you can
I
tell the
suppose.
different styles of humors when it comes to Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, as when it comes to American humor. But that's in almost any type of humor when it comes to, like, obviously, like, say, Laughing and Benny Hill.
Very different.
Oh yeah.
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 The American versus British. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what it is. It's very different types of humor.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a lot of wordplay that sort of takes place in Hammer films, whereas with Universal, it's more kind of reaction shots or very sort of quick-witted kind of one-liners. Whereas with Hammer, it'll just be something like Peter Cushing doing a very droll line delivery that has a double meaning, and all the British people just go, "Oh, how very witty."
There's a particular scene I remember that's incredibly the kind of dark humor, where he locks the maid into the room with the creature, and then the next day he's like tapping the top off his egg, and he's like, "Has something?" And his wife is like, "Has anyone seen the maid?" And it's like definitely kind of like, oh, Jesus, that's dark.
Yeah.
So, Chris.
Hey, Mikey.
How about you, Drivenstein?
The one thing that strikes me about these is it's kind of like how Star Wars in the sequel trilogies kind of cannibalized itself. It kept kind of sticking to the creatures in universe. It really didn't add anybody new by and large. And that's both, characters that you're going to kind of continue to follow. It gives you a little bit more of a storyline from movie to movie to some extent. The one thing you can say about these Hammer movies is it kind of recreates the same story in different ways over the course of 7 films. There's not necessarily a lot of continuity other than like 1, 2, 4 or something like that. Which isn't a bad or a good thing. It's just part of it. They do, though, expand out. You get to meet different people. They may be variations on a theme, but they are still different people. And Cushing is just, for whatever Colin Cleave brought to the table, and he was a very good Frankenstein, but there's just something about Peter Cushing. He is so damn good. So,
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
I agree. I'll say he's so fuckable.
Peter Cushing.
I mean, he has that British kind of, aristocratic kind of way about him. Fancy man.
Wait, okay, Jen, Brad Dourif, fucking Skarsgård. What is it about skeletal-looking fucking men that turns you on? Explain it to me.
No, I mean, he's very posh, and I'm Chris. Okay, it's me then.
Jen, do they swear?
Talk to me in that British accent of yours.
No, I prefer a different accent, but British is fine.
Jen, do they Happy Meal your tits?
A little bit. When I was younger, when my tits were a lot younger. They're a little younger.
Oh, come on now. As much as I enjoy Peter Cushing, he can't top Tom Baker or David Tennant when it comes to Doctor Who.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
What about you?
I mean, I like Cushing. I like Cushing's novelty as a Who, but
I will say,
like him in Dr. Seuss's.
Yes, like him in Dr. Seuss's.
I will say the Monster from Hell. He was rocking the hairstyle he was rocking, being that it was so different than what he had in the previous movies. Kind of the anti-mullet thing going on. Like he did kind of look like Doctor Who at that point.
He was very John Pertwee.
Yes.
Oh God.
He wore a wig
Which was weird because that film had Patrick Troughton in it as well, so it was very, very close to being the 3 Doctors, basically.
Oh my God.
I was like, wow, you got almost all the 3 Doctors in here. Oh, now Sean's frozen.
Uh-oh.
How about you, Jen and Velvet?
For me, I'm sorry. I hope I don't get your channel taken down,
Really?
but it's gotta be sex. It really, and I'm not being funny when I say this, because it was very repressed, and I think Hammer is the one. Both gore and sex, we really amped that, and that's what the people say about horror. It's all gore and sex, and surprisingly, you wouldn't think a British company would be all about the gore and sex, but
Hammer absolutely was.
they were about the gore and sex, and you had these busty, voluptuous women with their tits just about hanging out, and then you also had, for the time, quite a shocking amount of blood and gore, and I appreciate that, but it's done so artfully. It's still tasteful, but just barely. Oops.
It's smut, but tasteful smut.
Yes, exactly. Smut but tasteful. And there's kind of a poet. Like, this is going to sound kind of dumb, but I always thought there was kind of a poetry to the Hammer films. There's a beauty to them. This is where even before Uncle Argento taught me. Hammer was the first one to show me there is beauty in gore and horror and the macabre. And that's what I always appreciated. There's an artistry, much like Dan said, that's been duplicated many times by other horror things, but it's never been replicated with anybody else. So Hammer stands out on its own with style.
Absolutely. I think that also like the thing that really makes the Hammer film stand out is the Universal films. You're following the monster for all of them. Colin Clive kind of becomes a footnote after Bride for the most part, whereas with the Hammer films you have Cushing in all but one of them. You're following his as the ongoing story. The monsters are all like the little side notes for the films, like for the main draw, but like the actual main draw and the main reason you watch the movies is for Cushing. And seeing how his deplorable fucking version of Frankenstein is going to get fucked over / get out of it this time and stuff, and what kind of fucking horrible shit he was going to get down to doing this week, basically.
The one thing about the Universals is where they gave Frankenstein a little heart. Like they at least they made him sympathetic. Maybe not heart, but sympathetic.
This one, most of the Hammer films just like giant corpse going around killing maidens and shit.
Yeah, exactly, and a little more evil, which I like. It has a much more sinister. If you want a more wholesome, this is going to sound weird, but if you want a more wholesome, go to the Universal. If you want a little more fucked up and sinister, go to Hammer.
Yeah.
And you get to see a lot of tits.
A lot of tits.
Ow! Yeah, Horror Cat Dad's right. They did nail the goth aesthetic.
Oh, they're all about that gothic aesthetic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That's a good point. Hi, Larry. They didn't use Happy Meals for tits. That's all I'm saying.
Stands out for you for the Hammer Frankenstein.
Yeah, that's basically what Dan and Jen and Velvet have saying when it comes to Hammer. It's the gothic setting. It's the more very violent nature of Frankenstein's monster. It's the more obviously the atmospheric, and obviously they have beautiful women, very revealing outfits in mostly all of the movies, and of course Peter Cushing. I mean, he does a fantastic job in almost all the movies he starred in on the Frankenstein movies. Unlike, even though people love Boris Karloff in the movies in the times that he's played Frankenstein's monster, but it's never any violence in it. I guess the only one you can think maybe had violence in it was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, but you really don't get any violence until at the end of the movie when they finally fight and then they drown.
Yeah.
And they drowned to death. But that's what kind of lured me into more of Hammer horror. First seeing obviously the horror of Dracula, Christopher Lee's first go around, and then seeing the other Hammer horror films. I was really impressed because wow, this is very good. It's really dark, more atmospheric. And you see these obviously very attractive women in these nightgowns. It was totally something different. It was the first time I got exposed to it, and that's why I always enjoy and love Hammer horror.
I'll say one of the things that
repression, like it shows kind of like Universal was kind of more repressed where we were going. Again, horror was always shining a light on the times, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean. I'm sorry.
I think Dice agrees with you, Jen.
In conclusion, tits. Well, thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
There's no movie called The Tits of Frankenstein, and I think that we lost something in that, not having that. Yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just gonna say one of the things that attracts me to it is the color.
Yeah, true. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
The beautiful, vibrant colors and the fact and the backgrounds are like paintings, it looks so beautiful, and of course the gothic tone, the set design is like none other, on top of having a fantastic actor like Peter Cushing to carry the series on his shoulder, basically, and as intriguing as he is as a character and how he progresses throughout the series, and like Jen said, it's all about what is he going to get into next, or how is he going to get away with it, or how is he going to survive,
Yeah.
So next thing I want to ask is if you look at the way the Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell ended, do you feel that the series could have continued, or do you think that was as far as they could have gone with it? They've done everything they needed to do, or do you think it could have gone further? How about you, TYTD Reviews?
So I wrote my response out for this one because I want to be very careful with what I say. So honestly, for the mid-1970s, no. I think that era of style and filmmaking was kind of coming to an end by the sort of mid-70s. The blockbusters were just around the corner. Audiences were hungry for quicker, faster-paced narratives, stronger visuals, more developed productions. Monster from Hell, retrospectively, feels like a throwback picture when you consider that this was the era that gave us The Exorcist, The Omen, Rosemary's Baby, The Wicker Man, Blood on Satan's Claw. 4 years after Monster from Hell had come out, you'd have Halloween, which really isn't that big of a window when you sort of think about it. But I feel it shows a change in audience taste. It's slow boil, it's bloody, it's not gory creature feature style period cinema, which was very much on the way out at that point. Horrors of the modern day at that point were on the way in, and it would stay that course for quite a while. But on the other hand, do I think it could continue now in 2024? Certainly. Yes. But I suppose the question would also then be, if it was going to continue, would it be needed in this kind of film landscape? I think if someone was to make a new Frankenstein, mid-budget, minimal sets, with some big set pieces within smaller scaled locations, with a small but well-selected cast, keeping it slow boil, I could see it doing quite well, given the series was much less based around the monster factor and much more off the ethereal of what makes a person a person. I mean, an example of recent one would be Benedict Cumberbatch's take on Frankenstein in the theatre recently. He did a really, really good job on that.
Yeah, with Johnny Lee Miller, right?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Someone uploaded that to YouTube, I think.
Oh, it was a phenomenal piece. And again, it was all on one set, and it was just these two actors playing Frankenstein and the creature kind of just interacting with each other. But with the film landscape being so diverse and rich these days, elements of these Hammer movies, have existed well beyond the actual sort of film studio. I mean, you've got films like Lisa Frankenstein that are modernizing the sort of existing frameworks of, these types of films. So while I do think it could go on, I mean, the question I would ask is, is it needed nowadays as much as, could it be a success?
Yeah, because that kind of intrigues me. Having seen Lisa Frankenstein, Birth, Rebirth, and the Black Girl and her Angry Monster. Yeah. Out of all those, I kind of liked a little bit what Lisa Frankenstein was trying to do. I actually did like Birth, Rebirth a lot more because it actually was a different take where you actually see women in this particular role, not a man. And as much as I wanted to like the angry girl and a monster, that was kind of disappointed in that one. I expected a little bit more, but yeah, it's kind of hard trying to fit that type of narrative in today's modern horror. It really would have to be good. I mean, even better than Kenneth Branagh's attempt at his version,
or Van Helsing. I mean, that one. I'm sorry, that's. Like
we don't talk about Van Helsing.
Why not?
I kind of dig what Stephen Sommers tried to do. It was just too much bad CGI.
Yeah.
So this is the thing with a lot of contemporary versions of the Frankenstein story. There are these little glimmers of Hammer just sort of running through the core of them sort of fundamentally. But like Hammer Frankenstein films as a sort of, structural film are very kind of slow boil character pieces. And, to a contemporary film audience, I feel like the pacing and sort of atmosphere of the Hammer horror eras of the 50s, 60s, and 70s might just be too slow for people who are like predominantly on TikTok or predominantly like the more faster paced horror films. It's very much a product of its time, but that doesn't mean it's bad necessarily. It just means that it's its own unique flavor that would be very hard to replicate and successfully, I think, in a contemporary setting.
Mm-hmm. I think what happened was because of Stephen Sommers' success with Brandon Fraser's The Mummy, they really wanted to hit on the other Universal monster films, but unfortunately, Van Helsing failed.
Fans have failed horribly.
Yeah. I will say,
sorry, Chip. Work away.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quick that, like, and again, it's slightly off subject, but really, on the subject of kind of the Universal and kind of going a modern take, I was really hoping that the Dark Universe would be something that would work. Like, that kind of went down in flames.
Yeah.
And Horror Cat Dad brought it up too. Made me think, have flashbacks to the Mummy because.
Oh boy.
Dead on arrival.
Yeah,
Just
talk
because you
about
work
miss.
well with a vampire doesn't mean you work well with any other properties.
When the big hype for your movie is having actors for other movies that are playing characters who aren't in that movie, and having a big grand image of here's our big Avengers. None of them are in the same room. We all obviously photoshopped together. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, a little bit. And the thing is, they did take that in interesting directions, and it would have been kind of cool to see. They weren't necessarily good directions, but it was something different.
Oh,
no,
absolutely.
But I don't know. I mean, the one thing with, and I don't mean to continue on, but the one thing with the Hammer movies, I enjoyed them for the most part, but it was kind of the same tale over and over again in a lot of ways. But there's only so much you're going to be able to do with the guy that brings people back from the dead.
Yeah. There's only a few options.
The thing is, as kind of meandering as the Hammer Frankenstein's got, at least they didn't go too off the rails like the Dracula series. I mean, I love vampires, and I love the fact they tried doing a fucking 007 Dracula with what was it, Dracula AD or 72 AD.
I enjoyed that one quite a lot.
I thought you were going to talk about Dracula. I thought you were talking about the Scarlet Dracula, not Dracula AD.
Yeah.
Okay, but I like the modern interpretation. They were trying to hey, it's Dracula in the 70s. It's Dracula in James Bond.
Yeah.
It's Dracula in a kung fu movie. It didn't get to that kind of level of pomposity,
Was the 70s was Bond being with Dracula like the equivalent of Jason in space?
It was fun. No, don't get me wrong.
No. I'm just asking generally. Like, I'm not trying to be weird. I'm just that kind of came to mind as a thing of
it's kind of the same equivalent. I'd say. Yeah. I'd say it's the same equivalent.
It just those movies, the Dracula movies, while fun, it just felt like they were running out of ideas and throwing shit at the wall and seeing what would stick.
True.
That's what I felt. Where there was at least some kind of consistency. There was consistency with the Hammer Frankenstein movies. And going back to Sean's earlier question about why Frankenstein, the Hammer Frankenstein was a bit better than different from the Universal ones. Sure, the salaciousness and the gore helped, but I like the fact that it actually focused on Frankenstein, not just the monster. It was actually focusing on the doctor. And then you had the paradox as well, as Cushing being the hero in the Dracula series, he got to stretch his wings as a villain. And a real crafty one as well. I remember one scene where he wants to murder some dude. He's like, come check out this painting. And he just fucks him up.
They never did fix that banister, by the way. Like later on in the movie, like however long later, like months or whatever later, they just put a board across the top.
I'd like to change my answer now. I absolutely regret that we never got Peter Cushing in Frankenstein in Space or Frankenstein in the Hood. So
that was going to be my answer. I wanted Frankenstein 1970 AD. Give me Frankenstein, like trying to fucking create a monster and they have to go after hoes and shit in the 70s. I want that shit.
No.
I want Pimp Daddy Frankenstein.
A British Pimp Daddy? Yeah,
British Pimp Daddy Frankenstein. Give him like a cane and shit.
Unfortunately, they were not called that during the 70s.
True.
Guys, do you think there's an edit of the first Star Wars out there, New Hope, with Cushing actually making Darth Vader like fucking Frankenstein?
Oh, that'd be so cool.
How cool would that be?
Yeah, you could say, Blackula would be if they could put it this way, there was a Black Frankenstein horror picture that came out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's a
Blackenstein
Blackenstein too, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. Black.
There was
Yeah.
a few.
Yeah, Blackenstein, not nearly
Yes,
as well
understood.
remembered as Blackula for a reason.
Yes, yeah, that's right. When I saw that, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
What the-
You couldn't make something like that well, you could, but
you could. The answer is should you, and that answer is nah, nah. We're good.
I said, look, okay, I get Blackula, but
Yeah.
not Blackenstein. I said, look, come on, guys, enough is enough. But hey, look, black rotation films was a thing during the '70s. So what are you going to do?
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. And they have their place just like everything
Yeah,
else.
absolutely. Again,
Oh,
I'll,
yeah.
I'll cop for fucking
Sugar Hill.
Blackula as much as more than most people. I'll cop for fucking Sugar Hill especially. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
some of them,
Yeah.
some of them are Blackenstein.
I'll
Yep.
take P.T. Wheatstraw any day.
Yeah, not all of them need to be remembered as fondly as
No.
others.
Yeah.
How about you, Jen and Velvet? Do you think the series could have gone on, or you feel like they took it as far as they could? think it would've
I mean, I am a like
Faded
Monty
away
brought up-
anyway due to the landscape of the time.
I see, like what Monty said, but then see, I think it's a smaller audience that would appreciate it nowadays.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
for a slower burn. But one of my favorite movies was Birth and Rebirth. I freaking absolutely love that. And a lot of people love Pet Sematary, and there is the Frankenstein element in Pet Sematary. You just have to go. See, I like the horror, and these kind of movies really do ask the hard questions of not only can we bring back somebody for the dead, but should we bring back somebody for the dead? Are we creating? Are we to save
Sometimes.
someone? Are we losing our humanity to save the thing we love the most? It's a very fascinating question, but not a lot of people are like sitting there. They just want the,
You say that, yet last year in particular had like three, granted two of them were smaller indie films, but still there were three pretty pretty notable movies that were all like some variation of Frankenstein. Angry
Yes.
Black Girl and Her Monster, Birth and Rebirth, as well as Poor Things, which was nominated for several Oscars.
Yes,
So,
and
like,
that did bring back the horror tradition of the sex.
yeah, very much so. That one out of all of them probably feels the most hammerish.
It does, and the
Um,
costuming as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then later on, earlier this year, we had Lisa Frankenstein stuff. So I feel like the Frankenstein mythos, if anything, kind of is could be very well be kind of going into a bit of a renaissance, and a lot of people having a lot of really fun and interesting ideas with. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Like, just look at like Ken Russell's Gothic and stuff. Like, technically a Frankenstein movie, but drastically different from any other Frankenstein film. Or
Oh, yeah,
a lot of
definitely.
movies from like the 70s or 80s, like The Bride, which hardly anyone remembers or talks
That's a
about.
great movie.
I love The Bride.
But also, can I
Sting.
bring up
Stinger.
Robert De Niro's?
Yeah, I think
Where it was a very much a Hammer movie, just set in the 90s.
yeah, and you had a lot less skilled of a director handling it. I like Brana, but you know,
But
Yeah.
nobody talks about that movie.
yeah,
anymore.
not many people remember that one because it was basically just trying to be Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, but infinitely worse.
Yeah, it didn't have
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Didn't have it. I
Yeah.
think they could have. What I've liked to have. I don't know what more we could have done. What could we? I mean, unless we had gone to space. And
Yeah,
those.
eventually it would have just evolved into like Frankenstein
Yeah.
just content. And even then, the series itself kind of has this problem of like, okay, so there's no real stakes because Frankenstein's going to get out alive, or we're going to leave on a cliffhanger of, oh, did he die? And then he's perfectly fine the next movie, and we may or may not even explain how he's alive this movie. So yeah, I think it's kind of was one of those things where yeah, it was time for it to come to an end, but. I mean, considering Hammer technically is sort of trying to make a comeback, and we have them kind of reimagining some of their classic films, of like the new Dr. Jekyll is very obviously a reimagining of Dr. Jekyll's Sister Hyde.
Yes.
Mhm.
And if
and we
that-
had Wakewood a while.
yeah, and who knows if that actually ends up doing well, or it gets anything outside of a very small British release that it's currently had. But like, I could maybe they could do something with like a modern version of like their classic Frankenstein formula, but modernize it and update it to like to some modern standards and introduce a lot more contemporary themes, like they kind of did with their Dr. Jekyll by the scheme of things.
I would have liked if they would have actually mixed their Hammer sensibilities with a little bit of more universal, like maybe one story where we did focus more on the monster, because they never really did that. That might have been an interesting take,
Possibly.
especially of who you have for the creature.
Yeah, depending on what actor you had, it could have been really cool.
Yeah.
Or hell, do a movie where fucking like Cushing is playing the monster and like Frankenstein's actually dead and someone else, one of his apprentices or someone else fucking brings them back. That could have been interesting.
Not Christopher Lee.
Fuck it, why not do a complete role reversal? Just do a complete,
Why not?
or just have Cushing play both roles for the fuck of it.
Yeah,
Oh, there you go.
that would be genius.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Or
because it's
Cushing
dead
could
won't stop
play
them.
Dr.
They could do what they
Jekyll
did
and
with
Sister
Star Wars,
Hyde.
just CGI him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I was gonna say one film I thought did have a lot of influence from the Hammer Frankenstein was Reanimator.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
Herbert West. I feel like Herbert West's character took a lot from Peter Cushing's Dr. Frankenstein, and
Yeah.
Very
again the
obviously.
Yeah, very-
elements,
very
the
obsessed.
relationship. Yeah, the relationship between him and Dan reminds me of him and Paul in the Curse of the Frankenstein, where he keeps
Yeah.
drawing him back in, against his
morally-
better judgment.
Absolutely. And the moral
Right,
gray
right.
aspect that he has in the first couple of movies is very reminiscent of the morally
Mm.
gray that Herbert West has.
Absolutely.
He
Mm.
just wants to work on his
He
experiments.
doesn't care about your life. He doesn't care about whatever romantic bullshit's going on over there. He doesn't care about your titties.
Wait,
Science! I need to work on science.
what? Wait,
Science!
even if they're Happy Meal titties?
Yes.
Oh.
Herbert West,
Oh,
the
gosh, I'm
original horror
sorry.
asexual.
Yeah, really. That would be another thing that, especially since it is Pride Month, that would be interesting to kind of, you could do, and
there's
they
so-
have tackled it a little
There's
bit.
so many queer themes that you can add on to the Frankenstein mythos that I feel like is a complete missed opportunity that most movies really completely gloss over. Like the most obvious one's probably Rocky Horror, and even then, that's its own creature.
Yeah.
Pun
Mhm.
mildly intended.
Which would be an interesting take, though.
Yeah,
I would
for
like
sure,
to
for
see
sure.
Oh
it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, did you know the
Yeah.
the big tank that Rocky is in was
Mhm.
from Hammer? I think it was from, I don't remember which version or which movie it was from, but it was one of the it was
Yeah.
drawn from the Frankenstein series. So,
Yeah.
No kidding.
yeah.
Mhm.
Just like the house that they used was,
Interesting.
I think on the back that it
Fun
was used.
fact.
Yep, it was brought back from. It was used frequently as a Hammer horror house.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The Frankenstein, the Frankenfurter place is very much. I forget what I've specifically seen it in a Hammer movie. I've watched Hammer movies. Like, wait a second, I know that fucking house.
We've been here
That's pretty
before.
cool.
Yeah,
Once or twice.
once, twice,
Did you do the time warp when you saw it?
possibly.
Because it's the pelvic thrust that really drives you insane.
That was incredibly off key.
Fuck off.
Hey, you know what? It's just a jump to the left,
God damn it!
and then you step to the right.
God,
Put your hands on your hips.
the Rocky Horror stream is next month. God damn it!
So long as we can talk shock treatment as well.
Fuck
Yes.
I was about to
yes.
say, when's the
exactly.
shock
Damn
treatment?
right, we're talking
stream?
shock treatment.
Hell yeah!
Mhm.
But that
The
is
best
for another
soundtracks I
stream.
own.
I never even
That's
heard
right.
of that. I never even heard of that till you guys told me about it. I'm like, what? What is that?
Shock
Oh,
treatment is
So
great.
good.
Oh,
So
fantastic!
good.
Fucking great.
All right, guys. So now let's get into the series itself. I know we took quite a bit of time with that, but let's get into The Curse of Frankenstein, a film that put Hammer horror on the map, so to speak, back in 1957. Kind of the Hammer horror version of the original Universal classic or the story by Mary Shelley. What is you guys' take on The Curse of Frankenstein? TYTD Reviews.
So I have a bias about this film anyway, because it was the first Hammer film that I ever saw, and I also wrote a thesis on it in college. So
Oh,
all right.
Wow,
so you know
So, like,
nothing.
that's awesome.
no, I'm completely rubbish at it. But I got lucky as well because the year before it was sitcoms. We had to watch The Office, but the year that I did my thesis, it was Hammer Horror versus Universal, and we watched both the Frankensteins.
Before you go any further, what did you think about the American version of The Office as opposed to the British version?
They're very different beasts. I appreciate both of them for what they're trying to do. I find that the British office rides much more on pathos, whereas the US office has more kind of quotability. I think a lot of the British office sort of rides on a level of cringe, where it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Whereas the US office is infinitely more sort of gut laugh quotable. You can just kind of say, that's what she said, and instantly, it's straight in. But yeah, when it comes to Curse of Frankenstein, I have a real nostalgia for it. I just genuinely love, given as well that it was one of the first horror films that Hammer really sort of tried to put out there. The fact that it's so lavish and rich and sumptuous, and the characters are so well defined this early on in the sort of franchise, I think is really quite impressive. Obviously, love Peter Cushing in this. Think he hits the ground running, really giving Frankenstein sort of as Trev said, a kind of morally grey level. He does some very malicious shit, but at the same time you kind of also look at what he's doing as kind of just a desperate man striving to prove to the world that he's right in what he thinks. As well as that, I will acknowledge that sort of around the middle it slows down a little bit, which I think that later films kind of managed to pick up the pace consistently throughout. But yeah, pretty much from start to finish, I always it's a comfort watch for me. It's one of those where I can just pop that on, sit, and just be absorbed into the story for the full run. And also, obviously, one of the first sort of mainline titles for Christopher Lee, who absolutely just owns his creature in this version. Just looks absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, I have a real soft spot for Curse of Frankenstein.
And talk about the grotesque makeup job they did. It just really stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as Marty said, the effects where he gets beat up or shot and stuff, it's so vivid for the time. 1957. There was nothing quite like it on the screen at the time. So there's a reason why the censors tried to jokingly introduce a new certificate for sadists to enjoy the film over here.
How delightfully British.
Yeah.
I'd go watch a film if it was rated S for sadism.
Yeah.
Wee!
And it definitely gets a little more gory when you see them, gathering up the body parts and taking the guy's head and putting in the the color I think is just so beautiful, and the set design which Hammer is so well known for. But this was the film where it really stood out so much, and. And I love the whole arc of Dr. Frankenstein. We even get to see him as a little kid, inheriting his father's fortune and hiring the science teacher, and then this whole arc storyline throughout is very interesting.
I thought that was a quite nice touch as well, actually, the relationship between Frankenstein and Paul. I know that they do kind of do similar things in other Frankenstein films, but that you really get the feeling of a long-standing friendship between the two of them that gets kind of soured once Paul realizes just how far Frankenstein's willing to go. It's a great performance between the two of them, real proper chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, it's like, oh, he's crossing the line now, after they resurrect the little dog or whatever, It's like, and he starts thinking about trying to do it on a person. You're like, where's this going now?
Whenever the dog scene comes up, my mind always goes to Return of the Living Dead. I just see that.
Dog.
How about you, Triv? Your thoughts on the original Curse of Frankenstein?
Well, I grew up on Universal, so the first time I saw Curse, it was like Dan said, it is such a vivid change than what you're used to. It absolutely pops off the screen. Even with an older copy, you can still get the sense of just how crazy vivid it is. the challenge of taking what Universal did and making something that's adjacent and that people will understand, but still being able to make it your own. It's so masterfully handled. And I think you could have a masterclass on how it was done here, because it couldn't have been simple. You know, you're fighting for all these things. I mean, even it's more manor house than castle. It's done in the attic as compared to the basement. You know, the look and feel of Lee's Frankenstein is so different, and they kind of hit the same, like, the major beats, but they make it their own, and there's such a talent in that, and I have great respect for it. So also Paul's hat deserves an acting credit, because that thing was fantastic.
You gotta love how Peter Cushing has a little side piece there with the maid.
Oh yeah. And she got shafted, man. That's yeah.
Oh yeah. he was so cool.
I think she was the one they threw to the monster, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And locked her in there.
And they did, like, even with when he pushed he's like, "Professor, look out!" And he's like, pushes him off the balcony. It just
Yeah.
That stunt fall as well is so impressive. Like, you feel the weight of that guy's head fall under his neck as he hits that floor. That's
boom.
Yeah, that poor brain never had a chance. It was damaged from moment one.
Yeah.
Yep. Couldn't have found a better way to kill him.
And of course, they add a little more sexiness with, Hazel Court's character. Very, very sexy, very beautiful, lovely. And it's just funny how naive she is at times. Like, she just has no clue whatsoever what he's doing up in that laboratory. She's just got a smile on her face, just happy to be living in this beautiful mansion.
Don't ask questions.
Don't question it.
Don't question.
With things like that, I think you can't, because it's like, if you go questioning things, then it offsets the balance of, this perfect life.
No matter how much Paul tries to get her out of there, you have no idea what he's doing in there. She never bothers to, like, go up and try to look or ask him or nothing.
Nope.
No.
How about you, Marty? Your thoughts on the original Curse of Frankenstein?
Like I was saying earlier on, just it's cool to see Cushing kind of stretch his wings, and you've got like a kind of as Triv said, morally he's not quite evil, but he's definitely like, fuck it, the ends justify the means. So I'll kill or disembody or do whatever the fuck I have to do to get my work, because for him it's like, oh, I'm going to improve the world. I'm going to make the world a better place by doing this, without realizing how fucking heinous. Like, it's a progression. It's like morally questionable to, okay, this is really fucked up. And you can see all the other characters around him going, what the fuck are you doing? But to him, it's just work as usual. And I think that's Cushing is fantastic, delivering that kind of caricature.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, his intentions are noble in a way. He's doing all this in the name to further the progress of science and to eventually, I guess, conquer death in a way,
I think it's true across all of the
But
films.
at what
that,
cost, of course? That's the whole...
One of the things that Cushing does so well is do the most heinous shit imaginable, but the way he describes it and sells it to you makes it sound like he's doing you a favor. It's like he's just a talent to be so awful, but at the same time so charming.
I'm doing this for you.
Yeah.
You and Grace. It's all for you, Damien?
No.
Oh, wrong movie.
Doesn't matter if he's blackmailing people. And how about you, Monty G? What are your thoughts on Curse of Frankenstein?
Oh yeah, like I said before, after seeing the horror of Dracula and then getting a chance to see Curse of Frankenstein, I was intrigued to see Hammer's version of their version of Frankenstein. I was very pleased with how, first of all, it's in color. That's one good thing. I says, wow, this is in color. And seeing the atmosphere, the Gothic setting, the violent nature of Frankenstein's monster, obviously the great performance of Peter Cushing, and of course watching lovely ladies. It's like, wow, why these ladies look so good? I was.
The answer is tits.
Well, unfortunately, I was a kid back then, so unfortunately, I didn't know what those were.
You didn't know what you liked when you saw, or you weren't sure what you liked about it, but you liked it.
Yeah,
as you were drinking a big glass of milk.
Yeah, that's one of the good things I've always enjoyed about watching The Curse of Frankenstein, was just getting a different interpretation of Mary Shelley's classic novel and seeing it played from a different version and from a different perspective, from the British version as opposed to the American version. Yeah, and I really like what they did. I like the storyline. Obviously, Peter Cushing, Frankenstein, he's worse than the Victor Frankenstein in the Universal one. And of course, the gore, some of that stuff looks very nasty looking and ugly, and poor professor. he should have just poisoned him so you get away and to damage his brain.
Actually, that is one point that I do quite like about Curse of Frankenstein over the Universal version as well, is that Curse ends on a bit of a downer compared to Universal. Like the Universal ending's like, yay, the monster's defeated, wedding, hooray! And this one ends with somebody literally getting guillotined.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay, the monster's dead, yay! Victor gets married, yay!
None of that.
Oh no!
I feel like the Curse definitely set up all the things that Hammer is known to be. But just set the stage for what is uniquely Hammer films in a way. That's how I feel. How about you, Velvet and Jen?
What I love them. What I love about this version as opposed to the Universal version for me, because that's where I saw the Universal version first.
I feel like a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, and one thing I love about the Universal version is Clive's performance. It's a manic kind of performance, very theatrical. Where Cushing didn't have that. He's slow. He's methodical. It's alive. It's alive. Over time. Yeah, it's alive. We all know that, even if you're not a horror fan. It's alive. It's alive. And I don't think you can ever top that. And Cushing didn't try to. He just gave a very different portrayal. Yeah. And I like both versions, but evil, if you really want evil, and again, the sympathetic from the Universal, where it's but then this isn't where he's a monster, pun intended, but he's really, again, it's kind of asking the moral ambiguity. If you're doing it for science, is it evil? And how far it is.
He's neutral to chaotic neutral for this movie.
Yeah.
The rest of the franchise leaning a bit more towards pure full-on evil, but at least early on.
Yeah, but that's one thing. And like everyone has said, the color aspect is very. There's something beautiful about the black and white. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But but getting to see it drenched in color, and there's just something, whoa, it heightens your senses, where the black and white doesn't necessarily dull your senses. You just have to appreciate it in a different view.
They both are shot very gorgeously and have a very distinct style all their own, but the Hammer films just have a very specific vibe that they capture incredibly fucking well. They utilize that color immaculately.
Cushing is also somewhat cruel in this, and I like that. There's a cruelness to him. Yeah. Like, he's still doing it, but there's also, you can tell, like, I think that's one thing, the duality of his nature. Yeah, it's for science, sure.
It's also because he has a god complex.
Yeah, and he kind of likes the power. Yeah. The power, it's like, I appreciate that. My tits were falling out, excuse me.
That does make you question, like, he keeps saying that it's for science, but like, past the first like 20 minutes where he's kind of learned all this stuff and brought the dog back. I mean, him and Paul even have the argument of, hey, think about all the things this can do for surgery and all this stuff. And he goes, nope, creating my own human. Screw you.
I'm God. Fuck you.
Feel my power.
Like, Trev brings up a good point as well. Like, the problems people have with the kind of Branagh Frankenstein, at least they give him a motivation with his mother dying at the start and stuff. So
It's always the mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's like Universal wants bit of pathos. Branagh's won a lot of pathos. This one, God complex. That's the interesting thing as well with Cushing.
But isn't that enough though? Like the God complex, because that can be a very fascinating avenue to travel down.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
Or
like
do you need
Cushing's Frankenstein was a lot of fuck around and find out.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like, just on the subject of what Marty said, is the opening of Curse and Frankenstein actually has Baron Frankenstein at his own father's funeral, and he just does not give a shit. He's just like, well, I've got money now, I want to get into science. If he had a
we've all
shovel,
been
his
at
dad
one
would have been in that
parent's
attic in 10 minutes.
Where we're just thinking, when's the time to read out the will?
Mhm.
Like you said, F around and find out. That's the whole point of experimenting.
Oh yeah, very much.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, you go back to Reanimator. I think it was Bride of Reanimator where he starts putting like hands, like hands with eyeballs and
Yeah.
attaching all that stuff like that.
And
I
the
mean, that
arm and
was
the leg together.
yeah. I mean, I could totally see, if you went behind the scenes or like in the group chat, there was a thing about the Tales of Frankenstein. I could see if that was done in modern days, like something like Frankenstein experimented to see what he could put together to create and learn how to attach things.
Right.
Mhm.
Ooh, attach things.
Oh, gosh.
Oh boy.
I just got the Simpsons in my head. Look, I made a pigeon rat.
Oh, if I was into the science stuff, it would all be about penises.
So you're beyond Reanimator. Got it.
Yeah, no, vagina's true. Vagina's true, because no one really focuses on the nubs as much as you should.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Most men do, Sean. Most men do. It's alive, and you just flick your tongue against the number.
All right, guys, and now we had this.
Moving on.
Da-da-dum, da-da-dum.
I'm sorry. It's very odd.
I have nightmares about that.
Mhm.
And for some reason, it's green.
Is that a gag at me? Is that a fucking knock
No,
at me?
it actually wasn't. Like Frankenstein's green. Like it's dead, so it'd be rotting.
Sweet motherfucking
Oh man.
The smell, Marty, the smell. A guy, if they were doing it, would have to get a
The
close
smell.
Oh, good lord.
I'm sorry.
I'm questioning my own existence. Oh, honest.
Horror Hangout brought to you by Poopery. Keep your dead limbs smelling better longer with Poopery. Now available in 3 cents. Rotting carcass.
That's actually one of the good aspects of the angry black girl and her monster was that the fact is, she had to keep those fit things all around because of his body was stinking.
That was a nice touch.
I just imagine like the little trees, like the little car trees.
Our air fresheners.
Yeah,
air fresheners,
hanging
yeah.
everywhere.
Like 7.
Go for
I
the new
would agree
car
with that.
smell or the cherry.
Ooh, literally.
Oh God. Is that a cat I smell?
Meow.
And on that note, let's talk The Revenge of Frankenstein, the sequel from 1958, which is one of the most successful Hammer films, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very
It
successful
is, yes.
sequel. But what are your thoughts on Revenge of Frankenstein, TYTD Reviews?
So, given the circumstances behind the sort of scenes on Revenge of Frankenstein, I am absolutely astounded it turned out as good as it did. So, the film immediately before this was Horror of Dracula. And basically, Universal got wind that they were making a Dracula movie and went, "No, you're not," and just immediately started litigation against Hammer. So they were really kicking off about it. And Hammer basically at that point went, "Well, we're a small studio. We have a budget for these films, but if they sue us, we are not going to survive this." So they just immediately started pummeling this film into existence as fast as they could, because they figured if they could get it out before Universal started anything formally, they could at least make some money to try and fight them. Which means that a lot of the sets from this film are from Horror of Dracula, which I quite like. But yeah, the fact that they were so under pressure because of the litigious sort of side of things kicking off, the fact that this film is as good as it is amazing. For me, it takes every single aspect of Curse of Frankenstein and just amps it up to the next level. You have a confident director, a confident writer who seemingly know the story inside and out now and have the real vibe for it, and they just build so confidently on what came before it. I think that, again, Cushing is now completely in his element and is just riding that high. You get a little bit more cheeky humor just sort of sidled in there a little bit, which was quite nice. I mean, in particular, I really like the grave robbers in the opening of the film. They reminded me very much of Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, which I thought was quite nice. They explore Frankenstein's character a little bit more in this, and the monster I also find to be quite a bit more interesting, because initially it's framed as Frankenstein helping a man with severe sort of disabilities, and then it's kind of twisted and sort of mutated into that sort of self-serving personal gain, and you deal with the character struggle. It reminded me a little bit of The Elephant Man in that regard, where you've got this sense of just awfulness running through it for all the characters involved, because nobody gets a happy ending really on this one, apart from Peter Cushing, who ends up with a lovely moustache at the end. I didn't know it was him.
Wait, it was?
That do throw you off, didn't it?
But yeah, again, absolutely lavish set design, gorgeous color use, gorgeous lighting. The characters are all fantastic. It's great pacing, decent act structure. And the only thing I could pick on anything with it was I didn't think the ending was quite as satisfying as Curse. But on the whole, I mean, that's nothing for the hour and a half or so that I enjoyed this film. I think it's probably one of my all-time favorite Hammer horrors, to be honest.
Nice. This is one of the few that actually had some pretty good continuity with the Curse of Frankenstein.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
You see what happened after the guillotine, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It was a fantastic mask. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
For the priest.
Sean, I like this movie, but I think this is where, for me, Cushing started to kind of go. And it's cool. I love him going full ham, but he was almost Bond villain-esque at some parts, especially with having escaped the guillotine by using the mask, and then later on as TYTD, the shite mustache. It's like, what the fuck? Wait, no. What? It's like Clark Kent, but it's even shittier than Clark Kent. But it's still fun, and I think the reason for it is that Cushing is just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna be theatrical fucking Bond villain from here on in, and that's why I think it worked for me. Again, at the start, I think he had noble intentions, but then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm fucking Baron Frankenstein. What am I going to do? You know? So a fun movie, mainly because Cushing is just like fucking cutting loose and realizing, yeah, I'm just going to be this evil, maniacal bastard for the rest of the series.
I'm even more disappointed now that Peter Cushing never got to say the line, "Wait a minute, I'm Baron fucking Frankenstein."
I always thought what they did here with the monster is something totally different. I think that's what stands out about this one more than the others, really. It wasn't like the typical, the hulking monster guy, like you were saying earlier. It's almost like a handsome guy to start with, and then he kind of degenerates as the movie goes along. And he develops the murderous tendencies, and his face kind of distorts. And
I really love that scene with the malicious guy in the lab who basically just throws him around and just like just hurts him for no reason.
He almost kind of does a Dorian Gray a bit.
Yeah.
I did think, for me personally, the pacing was quite slow, but that's just me. How about you, Triv?
Yeah. This one, I'm kind of in the same camp as Dan. I really enjoyed too, and I went back and watched these, and I could have sworn I have seen most of them at some point, but I realized I had no idea what I was talking about. I love the fact that, because so many of these, and I guess they kind of do it with Universal, you know, you get the next step in the story, but you really don't get to see progression. It's just kind of the same thing. And nothing against Universal. They tell a good story. They did it well. They knew their audience and they knew how to do it well. But there was just that progression of, okay, you know, I tried the first time. I screwed it up. Okay, we're going to try again. I got the perfect man. I'm going to do it right this time. And he runs across different mistakes than the first time out the gate. It's really the only movie that does that progression. And I really appreciated that it did that. It just, like, you find out that there's so much more to creating another human than just creating another human. You have to deal with the psychological aspects, you know, the fact that they have different needs and wants. You know, you're still dealing with a human brain, all that stuff. Like the thought of going on the road and being a showpiece like Elephant Man was the worst thing that this guy could think of. And obviously the way he ended up, you know, probably being exhibited around probably wasn't the worst thing you could have done, but yeah, it was, and I love the ending. I thought it was cheeky and goofy, and I really appreciated it. So
I like that.
Wahoo!
How about you, Phil?
That was a really good analysis of it.
Thoughts on the Revenge of Frankenstein?
I think Sean is lagging again a bit.
I'm sorry. Oh God, sorry. I was thinking what the hell? Revenge of Frankenstein, darling. What I like about it, and Marty is going to be the least surprised, and you too probably. I like the fact that no one really gets a happy ending in this one. I know, shocker, right, guys? I like that, and as Triv put, I was thinking of how good Triv put it. It's like it is more than just, you know, reanimating dead flesh. That's part of it, but you also have to do the psychological, and every bag of bones literally has a different chemicals going through their neons. Yeah. I'm trying to sound smart. Yeah. They're trying to go to their neons, right?
Love them bright lights.
And you just never know what you're going to get. And you keep going to mistake after mistake, and like and I've used this analogy before, but the definition of insanity is to keep repeating the process and expecting different results, which kind of this film does. Yeah. And the best horror thing, and it's not even, at least with some horror movies you could go, it's grief, because usually we're just trying to bring back someone we love. But with this one, that's not what it's about, and somehow that's more chilling. At least when you can go, that poor bastard, they're grief talking. This isn't that, and that's actually kind of terrifying. Yeah, because there's a whole clinicalness.
Yeah,
to it.
very much so, which I really like about this. Is, in my opinion, probably it's not my personal favorite of them, but it's probably the best made of them overall, in my opinion, from a writing standpoint. I think the concepts it plays around with, and again, like Triv said, the evolution of like actually exploring like. There would be more to reanimating corpses by just making the flesh live again and stuff. There's all kinds of chemical stuff, the mental side of things. Yeah, there's a lot of nuances to it that I really like, because this is like honestly one of very few, if not the only, example of a Frankenstein movie, or even just a movie about reanimating the dead, that actually explores and acknowledges that, and I really appreciate it for it. I think it gives it a really unique angle from the rest of the franchise and Frankenstein films as a whole. I don't, not to just repeat you, but I also do like that it does have like a dark edge to it, and like everyone kind of gets fucked over by the end, and not in the greatest.
Well, you're my kid.
Well, I'm not usually one for that, but for some reason it really fits and really works well for this one. This one has kind of like a slightly oppressive tone to it and feel to it compared to the rest of the franchise that I really like. And it really stands out as being really having a really different feel than the rest of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does. But you kind of wish they would have explored it a little more in some of the other films.
I wouldn't have minded that, but it kind of makes this movie even more unique and really makes it a massive standout from the franchise, in my opinion.
I get that.
How about you, Monty G?
Yeah, this was a pretty interesting setup. I like the continuity that they didn't forget what happened in the last film, and I like how he tricked the people in believing he was dead. Some of the aspects of this particular film remind me of a horror movie. I don't know if anyone saw the thing with two heads.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah, because I actually saw that film before I saw this film, and I like, wow, this kind of reminds me of the thing with two heads. But it's a different take on Mary Shelley, where you don't actually dig up dead body parts, you just take someone's brain and put it in somebody else's.
That's not as cool, though. That's not as cool. Like, I'm all for digging up corpses.
You need the grave robbing elements.
I need the corpses. Yes, I do.
All right, so I did. Corpses stink. They stink. You gotta keep air freshener around. At least this time you don't have to worry about putting air fresheners. You got a nice clean body, and and I like the fact they actually tried to change the Igor character into a nice handsome man. But eventually, unfortunately, as with all experiments, something fails, and what are you gonna do? I kind of did
work out.
Nope. I kind of thought they ran out of ideas, so they decided to have Frankenstein with he survived with a mustache. I thought it's kind of lackluster, but hey, look, you want to keep going.
And he also had a fancy tattoo.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, but yeah, I did hear that story, Dan, about how Universal was like, "How dare you cop up our Dracula? We're going to sue you."
We'll sue you.
Oh, their tale goes on. The next film, it gets even better.
Oh, God.
Yes, I was going to say, speaking of Universal, the evil of Frankenstein, which is when they kind of started working together, and they kind of got the rights to the makeup design of Frankenstein's monster. They kind of try to make him look more like the Boris Karloff version, and a lot of things in this movie remind me of the Universal series, especially the whole laboratory scenes. The way they play it out is very Universal. The look to it and the tone of it.
Yeah, I actually thought, why are they trying to cop up Universal? They did something they never done before. Now they're copping up Universal. It's like, wow, what in the world's going on here?
And even like the Frankenstein and meets the Wolfman, and where they find the monster in the ice, it's kind of a lot of things from that. And that, I think that is kind of the detriment of this one, because it doesn't really feel as much like a Hammer movie, which I don't care for as much, in my opinion. But what do you think, TYTD Reviews?
So I mean, this is also the start of the Terence Fisher car crasherama. So originally he was set to direct this, but got into a car accident the week beforehand, and the entire film was handed over to his cam-op, Freddie Francis. Basically, this film initially wasn't supposed to exist, for lack of a better word. What happened was, shortly after Revenge of Frankenstein came out, Universal and Hammer made a distribution agreement. So in the UK, Hammer would distribute their films, and I think they had some agreements through Europe. But in America, Universal would solely distribute Hammer films and would also take a profit from the sales of the films. And then they didn't make a Frankenstein film for about 5 years. And Universal was like, hey guys, you like Frankenstein? Well, if you want to make one, we'll let you use some of our Universal sort of stylings. And Hammer, who had been wanting to use Universal stylings like the Frankenstein design and the castle and all that kind of stuff, went, oh yes, we'll definitely make one. They had no script, they had no plans, they had nothing. All they knew was they could do Universal stuff. So they basically pulled out Curse of Frankenstein and just Universaled it. And then put it back out there again.
That's pretty much what Evil of Frankenstein is. It's like they just kind of redid Curse and just put Universal spin on it.
Yeah, effectively. And the thing for me was I kind of sat through this film, and the one thing that kept going through my mind is what's the point of this? What stands this out from what has been? And I mean, I'm not going to say it's not a pretty film. Visually, there are some quite nice visuals in this. I think that the lab setup in particular is very striking. But it's probably the least hammery of all of the Hammer Frankenstein movies. And it just, by the end of it, I just kind of was sat there thinking I could just go and watch the Universal Frankenstein movies if I wanted to get the same kind of vibe. Cushing is great in it. Still, I don't think Cushing gives a bad performance in any of these films, to be honest. He's easily the most watchable thing on here. But the monster, I wasn't a big fan of the kind of melting Jello pudding Luke personally.
I like
he doesn't really get to. It's delicious. I'll give him that. He doesn't seem to get to do a lot either. Really, he just kind of mulls about, and then the castle burns down at the end, and it's like, okay, fair enough. One of the things I did like, and it was one of the few subplots I did enjoy, was the fact that when Frankenstein fled his mansion, basically the police turned up and just went, oh, all this shit is ours now. And basically, like, the chief of police is wandering around in his bathrobe, like having sex with somebody in his bed. It's just like, great. I didn't know it was fine, just keep his laws. But I love the fact that Frankenstein seemed more angry at the fact that they took all of his personal belongings than the fact that they trashed his castle and just sort of drove him out of town for however many years. But yeah, this was one where I was kind of like, okay, I didn't hate it, but I just kind of sat there and went, what's the point of this? What am I gaining from having sat through this? So,
right.
What do you thought about Zoltan?
Fucking Zoltan, that
Goddamn Zoltan.
I hate hypnotists, and this is a prime example of why. Yuri Geller wannabe motherfucker. It's like, hey, I'm going to help you after you kill all these people for me. Actually, going back to what TYTD was saying as well, that felt very much like something out of a Universal movie as well.
Oh, very much.
I don't know if it's House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula, where you have this other doctor who teams up with fucking Hunchback, and they come across Dracula's corpse is being paraded in a traveling show, and your man takes the stake out and blackmails Dracula into killing everyone that are around him. So I kind of got that vibe out of this with Zoltan, and I'm like, fucking Jesus Christ, we've enough bricks in this movie
that's
without adding another one.
That's the movie starring John Carradine as Dracula, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the other thing as well that I kind of was like, what? The film's called Evil of Frankenstein, and Frankenstein is probably at his most grandfatherly in this. He doesn't actually do anything evil in this at all.
No, not really, yeah. He hides, he does this, he hides, he does this, he hides, he meets Zoltan, he hides again.
I mean, I think the biggest thing they could probably do him for is tax evasion, but to be honest,
TYTD, in fairness, they didn't have sex in these beds without asking, so that's
God.
Yeah.
So do you think like they really picked, like, we talked about the fact that Universal was about pathos and such. do you think that they kind of took the themes of Universal's monster movies and kind of brought that over here too, and made Cushing more like a Universal Frankenstein?
I mean, I'll be honest. I think with this one, they basically Universal just wanted them to make a Frankenstein movie so they could make bank, and then Hammer sort of went, "Oh yes, sir. Terribly sorry, sir. We should have done it 5 years sooner, sir," and then cleared off. I mean, it was quite funny when I was watching. Me and Triv basically like spent this weekend just watching Frankenstein movies because I've been ill with COVID all week, so I've just been like needing something to take my mind off things. And it was great because as the end credits rolled, Triv turned to me, and I wrote this down because I knew she would forget it. I said, she turned to me, and she just goes, "I'd rather discuss the weather than see this thing again."
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I will say there's one scene I liked that I thought was pretty funny when the priest comes in and breaks into the castle and he's ready to foil his plan or whatever, and he starts trashing everything and ruins, like, I think he knocks over the brain or something. He's like, "Why must they destroy everything?"
I said this to Triv. I said,
destroy
realistically, there's a really good twist you can play on these films where instead of Frankenstein being the immoral one, it's basically the story of a scientist who wants to like break a world life-changing discovery to the world, and like people are just like feral raccoons that keep breaking in and gnawing on it. Like every film is like, "I'm about to create it," and then a person breaks in and destroys everything. No, not again. Like in an alternate timeline, he'd be like revered as like a cancer cure or something, but because these feral raccoon people keep breaking into his lab and smashing up his brains.
God damn.
How about you, Jen and Velvet? What are your thoughts on the evil of Frankenstein?
Yeah, this movie sucks.
No, you need to be let your emotions out, Velvet.
Yeah, this movie's not. This is the worst of the franchise by a pretty decent margin, in my opinion. Like one of the weaker Hammer movies as a whole.
It's not. It's a Universal in color. Is basically what it is.
Yeah, it's if Ted Turner made it.
Yeah, basically Ted Turner.
Yeah, that's what it is.
By way of Hammer.
Ted Turner, technically.
I forget this movie exists most of the time. Anytime I'm watching the Hammer films, I'm like, which one's evil again? Oh yeah, the poopy one.
Yeah. There's got to be something you like.
Cushing's good as per usual.
That's
about it.
That's about it. Honestly, I don't like the monster design.
I do.
I don't like the monster design. I
like the design. I didn't say I like the story.
I know. Yeah, I don't like the design that much. I think just the whole movie's so lackluster and just been there, done that in the most and just done in the most. Well, we need to get a movie out there kind of way. It just feels like a modern Marvel movie, basically. Of like, well, we need to put something out.
It's one I don't hear very many, even like Hammerheads talking about.
I have talked to several big Hammer fans. I have never met a single one of them who comes to to a big defense of this movie. At best, they're just like, it's fine.
and trust me, they're being kind about it.
Yeah. Yeah, every series needs to have at least one kind of not great one.
This is the final destination of that.
This is the final destination 4 of the franchise. If I've never met anyone who actually likes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Marty?
Oh yeah, as I was saying earlier on, like it's just it's like TYTD was saying and Jen was saying, they finally got the rights and the license to use the whole fucking Universal aesthetic. We have it. We don't know what to do with it, but we fucking have it.
It is.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's serviceable. It's nowhere near as good as the other fucking ones. And again, fuck that hypnotist. Fucking
F that guy.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh man, the only good thing about this is when my brother and I were sitting watching this, and we're just like making jokes about how ugly Frankenstein was. It looked like someone stuck Play-Doh on his face.
Yeah,
I've heard that from other people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
It's a bad design in my
I
opinion.
like it because it's so gloopy and gloppy, and
I mean,
I like it.
That's my brother. I just cracked up laughing because we just making jokes about the monster. But yeah, and of course, I guess what are you going to do? They finally got a chance to get, because I didn't know about half the stuff until later on, as far as what Universal and Hammer decided to do. And I guess Hammer just said, "Hey, look, we've only got this stuff, but what are we going to do? What are you going to do? Okay, let's just make this movie and hopefully it works." And it unfortunately didn't.
No.
Yeah, definitely not Hammer-esque when it comes to the evil Frankenstein. I mean, the only good thing is Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's the only good
Exactly.
saving grace about this film.
Agreed.
He's
I would-
almost
Agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would also add, like, the one thing about Frankenstein's monsters here. I told Dan that, like, you could lift up like his whole forehead and like remove the brain and like change it out, like a USB or like an SD card or something. It's like, well, this brain doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like fucking NES cartridge.
Yeah.
All I have to do is blow on it.
Yeah.
In you go.
Like all the NECA figures, where they have 3 or 4 different heads, and you can pop one out.
Totally. The other thing I will say about this one is, to quote Ian Malcolm, they didn't take the time to stop and think about if they should do it. Like,
Yeah.
Well, they did because money, but
They did think about it.
Right,
The
right.
answer was
You think
Yeah,
because
me.
it's like this when
y'all.
you finally didn't get sued by Universal, and then Universal allows you to take advantage of their sets. So I can see why they wanted to do it, because they finally get an opportunity to do something that they've been wanting to do since they first created Curse of Frankenstein. So that's what they did. Unfortunately, they just didn't do a good job.
yeah.
we don't know what to do. As Marty said, we don't know what to do with it, but we got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think this was the original story that the original director wanted to do prior to his accident?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's good.
So
Point. I
the
don't know.
original writer was still on board with this when it was made. So the guy who wrote it was always going to be the guy who wrote it. And the guy who wrote it actually went on to write most of the later Frankenstein movies as well. So, like, this wasn't an early credit. He must have just, like I say, have been in a rush. He must have been like an Ed Wood job. We need it in a day and a half. Final draft.
We're gonna have you take all these body parts the way Frankenstein would and just like crush them all together.
Yeah.
This movie is the cinematic version of copying the person sitting next to you's book report and just changing it slightly enough where it's not that noticeable that you copied, but it's still there. You're not putting that much effort in there. You're just doing it quick and fast just to get a passing grade, pretty much.
The assistant was no Paul. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
What is with all the Pauls?
Hammer loved Paul's.
Paul's and
That's
Carl's.
true.
Carl.
And
Yeah,
hands.
Carl's too. I wonder
Lot
if
of
any of
hands
them
as
were
well.
hot Carls.
Huh?
I am not looking up Urban Dictionary for that one.
It's super hot. My brain is turning off.
Now, guys, speaking on the total lack of creativity of the evil of Frankenstein, here's a film that I think is the most creative in the series. Frankenstein Created Woman,
Yeah.
which I think really brought the series back in a great way, and it's very unique. You have instead of a monster, you have a woman who is kind of disfigured, and she had like a bum leg and all, and he makes her beautiful. And it also deals with the transferring of one's soul into another body, which is very, very interesting. It took the soul of her boyfriend Hans there, who was wrongfully convicted of murder and got the guillotine, and So
Off with his head.
good doctor transferred his soul into this beautiful woman played by Susan Denberg, and she goes on a killing spree like a slasher movie with a hatchet and taking out all the guys that tormented her and made fun of her for the way she looks and everything, you know. And yeah, what do you guys think of Frankenstein created woman? We'll start with you, Monty G.
This was very different. Obviously, a great rebound for Hammer, where Frankenstein created woman. Obviously, the concept of transferring souls was a different aspect when it comes to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and obviously, once again, you have a very beautiful woman playing the role. It definitely brings a lot of slasher vibes in it when she starts her killing spree. It reminded me, it got Lizzie Borden vibes when she does her killing spree.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, really. Once again, with the gore, the aesthetics are back. Everything that makes Hammer films great was great with this particular film. So, a very good rebound after the disaster that The Evil Frankenstein was.
Good one.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Trivenstein?
I absolutely love this one. It kind of not in the same way, but it kind of has a Halloween 3 vibe, as it's like you said, it's completely unique as far as these movies go. I know that it's kind of one of those things. Dan and I were talking. You could look at the way that Christina is handled as either very good or very bad. I kind of chose to go on the side of kind of the vengeance. They both had a need for vengeance against these guys that kind of screwed everything up for them. But no, I really appreciated it. I thought it was an incredibly good movie. It felt like a spiritual sequel to Revenge, and definitely a hell of a lot better than what came previously. For me, it was probably the most enjoyable, and it had some good humor. Everybody kind of gets their comeuppance, but you start to see in this one, and you kind of see it in previous ones, but this one definitely starts a trend of anyone that runs across Frankenstein will ultimately their fates will end badly. If they don't end up dead, they're going to end up maimed, basically.
Yeah, good point.
How about you, Marty?
I like this one because it kind of, I wouldn't say it's one of the earliest examples, but I'm definitely saying it leads into the whole kind of Hammer horror femme fatale, because you get this kind of, she's not evil. She can't help what's happening her, but you get this kind of like real. She uses her sexuality and her sultriness to fucking off these guys as well, and uses that to her advantage. And I see kind of parallels with this and Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. With Martine Beswick. I don't know if I'm getting the actress's name right.
Believe so, yeah.
That's right.
But I see parallels with that, and that's cool, because it was nice to see Hammer just not like have an actress in there. Oh, look, tits. It's just she has agency. She has agency. She has purpose, and you're fucked if you cross her. And I think this was one of the staples to start to that trend.
Great point. How about you, TYTD Reviews?
I agree with pretty much everybody here. Apparently, it's one of Scorsese's favorites, and I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
Basically, it's he apparently really quite likes this one. To me, it gave me really strong pseudo Grindhouse vibes. I mean, especially since Grindhouse was in its very, very sort of infancy around this point. You have films like She Freak and I Drink Your Blood going out around this time. It's a revenge film with a nice Hammer sort of sensibility about it, which I quite like. I like that Cushing, if anything, is kind of softened in this film a little bit, because he basically spends most of the movie.
I was going to say that he's not quite as.
No, he's not quite as evil.
He actually kind of has a few little heroic moments, which are quite nice, like where he's sort of seen the thugs off in the cafe, or protecting the cafe owner from abuse. One of the films that was running through my mind while watching this that I think it would make a great pairing is The Asphyx. I don't know if anybody's seen that one?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good
No.
1970 film.
What's it
They
called
both
again?
deal. Oh, The Asphyx, Asphyx.
I think I might have seen that. It sounds familiar. I have to look it up.
Yeah, it's 1970. Both films kind of deal with similar aspects. It's sort of more about the human soul. The Asphyx is about two Victorians who realize that there's like beings that live inside us, and when you die, you can capture them. So they try and capture one. It's a bit like From Beyond.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like the midway point between this film and From Beyond. But I thought that all the way through, I was just thinking, this is really reminding me of The Asphyx. Which was really nice. I like the symbolism throughout this film as well. The guillotine being a very prominent figure throughout as a symbolism of death and all the sort of macabreness that's sort of following from it. I mean, the only question that I really kind of came away with is this actually a Frankenstein movie? Because, like, just because it has Dr. Frankenstein in it, there's no real kind of, you know, all of the kind of mainstay ties that were present in the previous three films aren't really in this. It's very much its own kind of beast. And I really like it for that, but I'm just curious as to what you guys would think. Yeah. It really strikes out on its own, and I had a really good time with it.
I would say that's what makes it stand out. Yeah, that's why I like it. Yeah.
You got good taste.
Sean, do you think Cronenberg was slightly influenced by Rabid with this movie? Because, like, at the start of Rabid, you have the girl who's she's disfigured during the motorcycle accident, and again, it's
I never thought of that.
It's beyond her. The situation is beyond her fucking control. So that's I kind of took elements from that as well. But I'm just spitballing. I could be way off the mark as well with that kind of.
I would agree with you, Marty.
I would too.
Yeah, so would I.
I think
Also,
the
how
only two
about
things
a
in this that I
boyfriend there,
thought were
Hans? He was quite tough. You know, he took on like 4 dudes at once, like throwing chairs at him, slashing the dude's face. Like, damn, this guy's pretty tough.
Absolutely.
Plus, the guys that played the hoodlums were really good. Like, this guy's a real jerk. I like him.
You know, I would go with Jen's idea to Lorraine and Bob at them and you know, animate their dicks back to life in different ways.
I mean, that's always my answer to most problems.
Keeping it in the house. In my house.
I mean, we could just put them in the refrigerator, Marty.
We're not putting it in the refrigerator.
They need to go in the
We
freezer.
could get a crisper. You know, like we could just write penis across one of the crispers.
No. What if I get up some night and I'm feeling peckish and I'm like, oh, God, a sausage. Like,
I mean, it is just a good source of protein.
Oh boy.
Oh, jeez. Jen and Velvet, your thoughts on Frankenstein created woman?
Because I know you have a.
Yeah, this is my personal favorite of the series. I really dig this one. Like everyone else said, it's so different.
Yeah.
And it works really well. Movies that like this point in the franchise that really try to shake things up. You either can get a case with this, or say a Halloween 3, or you can get say a Jason Goes to Hell, or the entire Blumhouse Halloween trilogy of just being different for the sake of it to where it's a detriment. This one, it really works. Like, it's drastically different. Frankenstein isn't really even the main focus of it. If anything, Christine is way more the main focus of the film.
Yeah. He just sort of happens to be here.
Yeah, very much so. But I like that. I like that elements of it. It feels like a nice side story and a nice palate cleanser, especially after how safe and repetitive and kind of generic the previous film was. This one feels like a really nice shot in the arm to it. Also, like the proto-slasher elements that really work well for it. Honestly, it really gives it a very distinct feel from a lot of its contemporary films that it was coming out around of, because most movies were not this violent and bloody.
No.
No.
And more, like, especially with a female killer, like that's super cool. Plus, you have the whole soul transfer element of it, which is you can do a lot of modern and interesting readings about like some of the stuff themes it's tackling there. And yeah, I just always have really, really liked this movie.
I like it because we use axes, and it's like
Axes
I
are
always
nice.
say, the axes is the horror equivalent of a little black dress. They never go out of style. I mean, it's just something that's classic, right, guys? I like this movie too. Like I said, I'm kind of like, though, is this really? I mean, technically it's a Frankenstein, but he just sort of happens to be there. He kind of stumbles into the story, and it's really not his story.
I don't know. I kind of like in this movie is a weird fucking parallel as it is. I kind of like in this movie a little bit to Sudden Impact, a little bit.
I get
like,
what you mean.
It's of like that's
Yes.
the Dirty Harry movie where like Harry is not the remote main focus of it. I kind of liken it to that of like it's a part of the franchise, but it's a like a little side story thing where the main character is involved, but they're playing more of a background role of it, and we're following another side of the world. I like that element
and
of
it
it.
surprisingly works, and you can take a lot of interpretations.
Oh,
with
so
the
many!
soul.
I've heard a lot of modern readings on this movie. That it's easily the one I hear the most people actually analyzing and discussing the themes that it was talking about and going forward. And it just works really damn well. I think it's easily my favorite of them. Revenge might be a little bit better from a filmmaking standpoint and a writing standpoint, but there's something about this movie I've always really loved.
One thing you can say, though, it is a Frankenstein movie in the sense because we are still what makes a human, basically, because it's just a different part. We're not doing the traditional, but we are asking the hard questions of what makes a human.
As opposed to doing like the hardline science of like body, soul, brain, all flesh, and all that. We're doing we're adding a little bit more of a spiritual element to it with like with the soul incorporation and stuff. And I like kind of explore like, who is this? Is this her? Is this Hans? Is it something like a new being created from the two of them? I like that. I like those themes that it's really exploring and going into.
Yeah, it's very cerebral.
Yeah.
On that note, I do have to add when near the end when they reveal that Christine is talking to Hans's head.
Yeah,
I laughed out loud. Oh my god, I was not expecting that.
It's such a good reveal.
I love the fact that
psycho type of thing. It's awesome.
Yeah, very much so.
I love the fact. I love the fact the quality of that effect as well is on a par with like when Bruce Lee died and they just basically put a sticker of his face on a mirror. It's like it's like a cardboard cutout of his head painted to look dead and just stuck on a shelf at first. It's such a great crash zoom reveal. I loved it.
It is.
It is.
I think just the idea of kind of, flipping the gender on the Frankenstein series is interesting. It's a woman. It's not some hulking monster. It's a beautiful woman. She's not even a monster. It's going the opposite.
But she was a monster at the beginning. That's what another thing I find fascinating.
As viewed by
kind of the opposite way, starting as
it's a very cool idea.
I mean, given what came before it as well with Evil of Frankenstein, you would think it would be so easy for them to have just done like a cheap Bride of Frankenstein knockoff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad they didn't do that, though.
Thank God they didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very curious as to what you guys think of the next film, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, from 1969. Once again, directed by Terence Fisher. And here we see definitely a different Frankenstein. He's much more evil, much more sadistic. And
he does some terrible things in this one.
It doesn't have too many endearing qualities. In fact, he straight up murders a dude and lops his head off, just goes out in the street and decapitates some doctor.
That's like my Tuesday.
I want to decapitate someone.
You do that, honey.
Okay.
And he blackmails
big knife in the car.
Yeah. And he blackmails a young couple into, doing his bidding and helping him along with his experiments. And there's not so much a monster per se in this movie. It's just like a brain transplant, into this brilliant doctor, There's even one, scene that many people talk about and many people question is the fact that, Dr. Frankenstein does rape a woman, Veronica Carlson's character.
Yep.
So I'm curious, what do you guys think about that? Did they go too far with that? Because I know even Peter Cushing and Veronica Carlson were against the idea of them including that scene, but the studio got involved and like, we want something that's going to shock people, and do you think that was just strictly for shock value, or do you think like that was kind of what his character was?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Jen and Velvet? I'm curious.
You go.
Why is it whenever it's a rape question, people come to me?
Almost like you built a reputation of like loving to talk about this kind of shit.
Not loving, but okay. Was it right? Yeah. Why did they put it in the movie? Because they thought they wanted to titillate the audience. They wanted to get something. We've done a lot of stuff by this point, guys. I like it because I do think it's necessary for the story, because we're just progressing of him just becoming more like the first film. You could say morally gray. By this point, he's a monster, and so of course you're going to up the antes, and it's kind of like dopamine in your brain. You know what I mean? Like the more evil you are, the more you need to up the ante, and I like that. And I do like I don't like the rape scene, but I feel it is necessary to the story.
I kind of fall in the camp of Carlson and Cushing of like, I don't think it's really necessary or needed, and like. It's not even that it necessarily feels out of place for Frankenstein's character, because again, I do kind of like, now granted, the last two movies have kind of contradicted that of like each movie he progressively loses more and more of his humanity. But if we're going off the first two movies, I can see that version of Frankenstein, especially this movie's version of Frankenstein, prior to that scene, kind of doing that kind of shit. He has little interest or little caring towards others or the well-being of them.
Yeah. I
can see that. I just, it feels sort of jarring and just sort of out of place with the rest of the movie, honestly. I've heard people argue that it adds this movie has like a specific like mean spirit to it that a lot of people really like about it.
I do.
I personally don't, and it's not my least favorite of the franchise, but I think it's one of the things about it that kind of holds it back a little bit. It's like it's mean spirited, but not in the same way Revenge was, where it had like a little bit of pathos and reasoning behind it. This one just kind of feels like it's just we need to up the ante a little bit and stuff. That's kind of where my issues fall with it.
How else do you feel about it? I mean, do you have much?
The movie's good on its own. I like the movie as its own. It's not one of my personal favorites from the series. It's probably on the lower end, bottom 3 for me, but I still like it. I still think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I like it a lot too, but then I kind of tend to like mean-spirited stuff, so that doesn't really surprise anybody, I feel. But I like it.
It is a mean-spirited one.
It is. And is it the most mean-spirited?
I would say so. Yes.
Yeah. I would too.
Of this series, yeah, I would say so.
And I like that.
I know you do. I know you do.
I do. I like to do character studies of like how fucked up can we get? Let's go, people. Let's go.
Be right back.
But as mean as Dr. Frankenstein is in this movie, I still think Peter Cushing is absolutely brilliant. Especially there's this one scene where he's talking to the other tenants of the house, and they're just kind of gossiping, and he's like overhearing them, and he's like, "Are you guys doctors?" It's like, "No, we're not doctors." "Oh, excuse me. I thought you knew what you were talking about."
Kind of a bitchiness to him. Yeah. Like there's a little bit of, like sass to him, which I like too.
Yeah, he's got sass for sure. How about you, TYTD Reviews? What are your thoughts on the Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed?
So the first note that I wrote down when I was reviewing this was just simply a Frankenstein movie that's an hour and 40. Get out of here. I like my Frankenstein movies sub 90 minutes. Thank you very much. So yeah, this one, the Terence Fisher car crash drama continues. He managed to not have one during Created Woman, but he was straight back in with another car crash on this one. So he spent most of it in a cast directing this film.
Stay out of course. He should stay out of course with the first one.
Somebody should have taken his keys. I swear they should have. This one was written by a guy called Burt Batt. Oh yeah, this one was written by Burt Batt. It was his only ever writing credit. And would you be surprised to learn that all of the mean-spiritedness and the rape scene and all of that kind of business that came into this film came into it because Hammer changed distributors with this film, and the new company was a US company that had never seen a Hammer film before, and they just basically they basically
Americans ruining everything.
They basically just sort
Leave
of
it to
got
them.
sent a.
Damn Americans.
They basically just got sent a load of like so back in the day before home video was a thing, they'd have like 8mm supercuts where they'd take the best scenes of the film and kind of put them together into compilations. Hammer basically sent them a load of those, and then all that came back was a list of, we need more nudity, we need more sort of suggestive stuff, can you have more gore, let's make it bloodier. Frankenstein seems too nice, make him a bastard. And that's basically just, and Bert, being a first-time writer, was in no authority to be able to question or push back on it. So he's like, okay, we'll do this. And the result is Frankenstein must be destroyed. And I had very similar sentiments to Evil of Frankenstein with this one. I kind of went through the whole thing and was just like, is the only point of this just to see how mean you can make Frankenstein? Because this really should be the real Evil of Frankenstein, given that Evil of Frankenstein was so tame. Right? Mm-hmm. I sat and watched the whole thing, and around about an hour in, I realized that like I couldn't for the life of me figure out what the sort of point of it was again, other than let's just make Frankenstein mean for an hour and 40. The ending was good. I quite liked the sort of the sequences in the house and the kind of twists and turns that came with that. But yeah, on the whole, this one was probably my least favorite. It didn't feel like it fit in with any of the other Frankenstein movies. And when Evil of Frankenstein is on that list as well, that's quite a sentence. Yeah, it was just a bit dry for me. It wasn't my cup of tea.
How about you, Triv?
I looking at the trivia on this one, the rape scene was actually added after everything else was done. So it was kind of not an afterthought, but there was no place in there where you would have had reactions to it. It didn't do anything for me personally. I think him belittling Anna was enough to kind of do the job. But I think the biggest thing, and I'm not an authority on rape scenes one way or the other, so everyone's going to see that kind of a thing different. The one thing that kind of stood out was, and again, it's kind of been mentioned, you have this, you're kind of going along with Frankenstein kind of becoming more nicey nice. It's such a departure from what he was previously. Like if you took, and we'll get to it, but Monster from Hell, and put that in between any of the previous movies and this one, you would have had that progression of, here he's sort of normal. Okay, he's going downhill. Oh my God, he's a complete and utter asshole. There is that progression. You don't really have that with this. It's kind of like, Anakin goes from sweet, adorable child to Darth Vader, There's not a lot of explanation. Like, you don't really have that normal progression of what he becomes. Yeah. So
I understand that.
That would be my one. That would be the one thing that I kind of pulled away from this. I mean, otherwise it was fine. It didn't really do, after Woman, it didn't really do a ton for me personally, but I can see why people like it. And there is a lot to be said for the person that Frankenstein should have been throughout, should have probably been closer to this version. So, yeah.
I think as Jen was talking about earlier with the God complex thing, I think comes into play here because he's got complete control and power over this young couple, and I think he relishes in that. I think that's kind of part of it.
Yeah, well, that is what rape is. It's control. It's really not about sex. It's about control.
Oh yeah, and it is too a case again where this young couple, they, it's like falling under the spell of someone who has your fate in his hands. Like their lives are utterly decimated because they ran across Frankenstein.
Yep. Does not end well for them.
No.
I do kind of find it quite funny that the rest of the film as well. Everybody involved in the production said this is like their favorite Hammer movie to have ever shot, and it's like one of the bleakest of all of them. Like Peter Cushing and Terence Fisher both said this was amazing, but.
I'm kind of like the rest of you guys because the progression of villainy with Frankenstein, with Cushing's Frankenstein, there was a rhyme and reason to it through the other movies, and like you could see that Cushing was having a bit of fun because he was a bit Bond villain, he was a bit Moriarty. In this one, he was more fucking Robert Mitchum in Cape fucking Fear. I was like, what the fuck, Jesus?
I would actually
I
go
love
more.
that movie.
I actually go more Robert De Niro than Peter Mitchell.
Well, yeah. I like it's just this absolute fucking heinous piece of shit, and you're like,
Yeah.
who am I rooting? Am I rooting for the couple? Who the fuck am I rooting for in this fucking movie?
Nobody.
Come out wherever you are.
It's just, I was like, honest to God, I was watching this movie and I was like, someone was either going through a really bad fucking divorce writing this fucking thing. That's what I took from this. But like, the fact that the writer was kind of bullied into doing a more aggressive version makes a hell of a lot more sense now. Like,
Yeah. Monty G, what are your thoughts on Frankenstein?
Yeah,
Must Be
this was
Destroyed?
kind of a off-putting film for me because I didn't understand some of the things Frankenstein was doing in this particular film, especially the rape scene. I can understand half the stuff he was doing because he was desperate trying to get what he needed, but that kind of threw me off a bit. I mean, I understand the purpose of it, and now obviously what Dan said, then I can see why. But they really think they do all that much. I mean, he was already doing devious things in the film. I think that was not needed. But then again, sometimes when it comes to American films, it's like we want more. We want more. We need more gore. We need more. We need more nudity. We need more the butchery. And especially especially this was coming at a time. When did this film come out? In the 70s?
69.
69 was coming at the time when all of a sudden American directors were trying to outgross the next person with all these ultra-violent horror, ultra-violent films that were about to hit the American stage. So, but to me, it was But to me, it's okay. It's not the worst. It's not the evil Frankenstein. Although you could actually call this more of the evil Frankenstein than that film was. But it's okay. Right. That's basically what you can say that. And the ending kind of reminded me of the end of Universal's Frankenstein.
Yeah. The fire in the. Like, how the hell did he survive that? By the way, like,
he's just that darn good.
And it also could just be, hey guys, in case anyone's missed it, he's evil. I mean, nothing says evil like rape, right? So, like, for anyone who's not sure yet, this could have been for the really slow people in the audience.
It was definitely like fucking overkill. It's like, he's a bollocks, but how do we show he's a really fucking nasty bollocks?
Now in 1970, we have something totally different as well because they decided to try something different and go with the new actor in the role of Dr. Frankenstein, Ralph Bates, in the Horror of Frankenstein, starring David Prowse, Mr. Darth Vader himself as the monster. It's kind of almost like a reboot in a way, almost like a remake of The Curse of Frankenstein with maybe a little bit more humor injected, Didn't quite work out because of course they brought Peter Cushing back,
Yeah.
But,
spoiler.
What are your thoughts on Horror of Frankenstein? Let's start with Jen.
This one kind of throws me off because like we had, and I didn't know, like, because I'm not a Star Wars person. I didn't know until Marty told me. Like, I knew the actor, but I did not know that was like Darth Vader. So as a kid, it always threw me off. I like it, but I'm gonna be honest. I like it better with Peter Cushing. Like, I don't even sort of. This is sort of the redheaded stepchild of this franchise. I'm like, I don't like you. I don't know you. You're not fucking Peter Cushing. Just leave me the fuck alone. Like, I didn't like it as a kid. In fact, I got in a fight with somebody. I'm like, no, this isn't part of this the thing because it's not Peter Cushing. It's fine on its own, but I just sort of had a bias. I'm like a little kid. I'm one of those obnoxious Halloween people. Like, if it's not Michael Myers, it doesn't fucking count. If it's not Peter Cushing, it doesn't fucking count. So this one, I like that, and I also didn't appreciate the humor. Like, I should, because I like the humor in the other movies, but because it wasn't Peter Cushing, I'm like, it's not as funny. I'm just a salty bitch. I'm a salty bitch when it comes to this movie. It's like, and I can acknowledge now it's not funny, but for a long time I'm like, that humor was just stupid. It was stupid. We didn't need it. They used it in the other films, but they used it better in those. Yeah, I was one of those salty bitches. I'll out myself. I was one of those salty bitches with this film. So I don't have it's like one of my least favorites of it, even though I can acknowledge it's not as bad as some of the others. So yeah. I didn't like this one a lot though. It didn't have Peter Cushing.
What about the part where Kate O'Mara like bends over and he's like, well, I see you've grown in two places, especially. Wink, wink.
Even that, Sean, surprisingly, I wanted to smile, but again, I was very a hater with this film because I was like, no, we can't. It'd be like Robert like someone else play. Like, I know we have to, but at the time when I was a little kid and saw this, I was like, it'd be like Robert Englund, someone else playing it. It just wouldn't work. It just doesn't work for me. It's like, no, this isn't it. And also, like, because coming from the previous film, it wasn't as mean spirited. So I'm like, no, they got it wrong. Where's the rape, guys? Where's the darkness? I don't like all this humor bullshit. So yeah.
But
maybe that's why, because the last one was so grim.
But okay,
yeah, but I like the grimness. I was an emo kid. I was dark and mysterious. I don't need all your laughter and lightness and not Peter Cushing and Ways movie.
But here's a question, Jen. What about Kate Mara's boobs? They were the best of the franchise, though, yeah?
Oh yeah, now they like I've said this and people think I'm kidding. Sure, her boobs are on my list. Like, I have a list for if I ever get the money and I could go to like a plastic surgeon, I would just show certain horror movies of, could you make them look like these? Yeah, they're in the top 5.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, my God. I mean, you just want milk whenever you see those things. But
I don't know, Veronica
it's not
Carlson
bad. It's not bad, but it's not one that's perfect
gorgeous.
for me.
She was very much.
Yeah.
Also, I like how vicious the monster was in this. This is the most brutal Frankenstein monster ever, probably. You know.
Yeah.
He's hacking up people with an axe. You know, like.
He does have single-minded awareness to him, doesn't he?
I love the fact also before he was Vader and before he was the safe cross code man. He was the guy who told kids, "Hey, don't fucking cross the road without checking." It's like Captain Wholesome, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
Seriously, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It was the Green Cross Code man. He was basically was. You guys have PSAs. We have public information films over here, and they used to play these in schools, like or during ad breaks, and it'd be him popping down like dressed as like a Superman type character, and he'd help like guide kids across the road.
Go to look left and right, kind of fucking accents.
Yeah. Sounds
so he was
got a very strong
man?
Cornish accent.
No.
Yes, basically.
TYTD, have you heard him doing like before James Earl Jones was inserted? Have you heard him as Vader? It's fucking.
Oh yeah, It's
I've seen
amazing.
those, yeah.
He's,
Oh yeah,
he's got
yeah.
one of the
I seen those.
strongest Cornish accents. So,
Yeah,
like, it's
I
just-
seen that. It was so funny hearing him talk in that English accent. It's-
I had the pleasure of meeting him at a Comic-Con about 10 years ago, and I'm talking about Terence Fisher. He'd been in a car accident, so he was wearing like a cast on his leg, and he was sat down. He wasn't looking too well. And I went up to him and said, "Look, I just wanted to say I remember you very fondly from my childhood as the Green Cross Code Man, and I love you as Darth Vader." And I kid you not, his exact response was he leaned in and just went, and then took the photo when I walked off. Didn't even say a word. He just creaked at me like a door.
What do you think of the movie without Peter Cushing?
It needed Peter Cushing.
That's just what I said.
Yeah, it needed Peter Cushing. It's fine. I
And
like
the humor.
the humor is okay.
I didn't like
again. It's one of my. It's one of my least favorite ones. It's along with the previous one and Evil, where it's like they're all kind of in the lower half of the franchise. I'm like, they're fine. This one's fine.
That's never good.
It's awkward without Peter Cushing. It just doesn't. Whereas like the less importance of Peter Cushing in Frankenstein's Created Woman, I actually liked this one. Him being completely absent, it just feels so awkward and weird. I don't know. It just doesn't work.
No,
but not bad. There's some good qualities
I
to
get
it,
that.
definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, what's
I
up,
don't
Mr.
accept-
Master?
hey,
Hey, what's going on?
I don't accept it. It's like Halloween 3. I do not accept it as part of this franchise. I do not
I was waiting for
acknowledge
that.
it. It's the same thing. At least I'm honest.
Fair enough. I'll take that.
I'm the person Marty hates the worst. It's like it doesn't have Macon Myers in it. It doesn't have Peter Cushing. Fuck you. I'm out.
Curious, TYTD Reviews. I'm curious of your thoughts on this one.
So I affectionately refer to this one as Curse of Frankenstein, the TV movie.
That's a good one.
Basically, this was another one that had a bizarre behind the scenes that kind of explains a lot of how it ended up being the way it was. So initially, this was pitched as like a direct-to-TV series. It was supposed to be like a 4 to 6 part TV series, but the distributor put a bit more money in, so they decided to let's turn it into a film. So they got this writer called Jeremy Burnham in, and they asked him to write a Frankenstein script, and he basically turned up late, and the script that he submitted was a 1-to-1 retyping of Curse of Frankenstein. He didn't ask him to do Curse of Frankenstein, he just did Curse of Frankenstein. And they were like, oh crap, right, we're going to start filming soon, we can't just do this. So they got Jimmy Sangster, who had written Curse of Frankenstein, and then basically said, Luke, somebody's just submitted your script to us to remake. We don't want to remake it. Can you change it? So they got Jimmy Sangster to basically start rewriting it. And then whilst they was in the middle of doing the rewrites, Terence Fisher, who was signed on to direct, got into a car accident again.
I see what you do.
That'll check that.
And Jimmy Sangster, being hot on his shit, basically turned around and went, I can do directing. He'd never done directing before. I can do directing. And the Hammerlot were like, well, we want to try and get a bit more of an experienced hand. And Jimmy said, well, if you don't let me direct, I'm not writing anymore. So they went, okay, you're directing, I guess. We need to get going. So this is Jimmy Sangster's first directing credit, and he basically rewrote Jeremy Burnham's script, and all he did was add more sex and comedy to it. So this is literally just Curse of Frankenstein on a lower budget that was originally intended for TV, but with more sex and comedy in it. I mean, it asks the question, what if Frankenstein was a frat boy? And I think that, deep down, that's all you really want to be asking with this.
That's pretty much it.
Apparently he was.
I mean, it's got its moments. I enjoy the yeah. It's got its moments. I like Kate O'Mara in this. I think she has a quite nice kind of venomous streak that runs through her. She can be a little bit dark at times, which I think is quite nice.
Yeah.
New Frankenstein, he's not as good as Peter Cushing, let's be honest, but he has his moments. He has fun. I like that they're a little bit more cheeky with the comedy. The bit where they animate the arm to flick the V's at somebody I thought was quite good. But yeah, it was just one of those where I got to the end and went, well, it's not as good as Curse of Frankenstein, but it wasn't bad. It's one that I just kind of against that there and went, well, why does this exist? I mean, it has its moments, but yeah, I liked it more than Evil and Must Be Destroyed. It kind of sits in the middle for me in terms of ranking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty much the same for me. It's not Peter Cushing, and you really can't fault um God, what was his name? Ralph whatchamacallit that plays
Bates.
yeah,
Ralph
it's not
Bates.
his fault, because it's not Peter Cushing, but Kate O'Mara, I like her because I actually loved her in Dynasty.
Yeah, yeah.
I love her in Dynasty, and she's, it's what it is, It's like it's not bad, it's not good, it's in there. It's definitely better than the evil Frankenstein, but it's not as good as Frankenstein created woman, and it's not better than
No.
the curse of Frankenstein. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have Peter Cushing, so therefore it's bad.
But you have cushion in Kate Mara's boobs, so that's got to make up for
There we
something.
go.
For myself, I found it really interesting. I kind
I
of
felt like
oh, good. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh, it kind of felt like this version of Frankenstein feels like what would happen if you had someone that was very entitled and they used that power to kind of just go do their thing. Like he didn't dig his own body parts. He didn't really seem to give a crap about anybody around him, more so than what Peter Cushing's Frankenstein would have done. I kind of wrote down that he's kind of a mixture of like Mr. Toad and Sid from Toy Story. He just
That's
kind
a
of
good one.
Yeah.
like he just doesn't give a shit. He's just like, well, he would move on from this hobby to probably like, model boat building next week. And then after that, he would use severed human heads to go bowling or something like that.
Ooh.
And you did kind of see that experimental nature. Like he wasn't polished. I know the movie itself wasn't polished, but like it felt like he was going as he went. Like this was his first attempt to make a body.
Good point.
Mm.
I was gonna say one of the things that makes it probably most like Curse of Frankenstein is Veronica Carlson. Very much reminds me of Hazel Court in the in the Curse of Frankenstein. Her character reminds me of Elizabeth a lot.
Was it the braids?
Probably.
There were braids for days. Oh my god.
I actually like this one. I thought it was fun. Because first off, I love Ralph Bates. Ralph Bates is like a keystone to. If you want a fucking arsehole in a Hammer movie, you get Ralph Bates. Be it Taste the Blood of Dracula or Dr. Jekyll's Sister Hyde. If you want some cocky up his own arse prick, you get Ralph Bates, and I think he was good in this role. David Prowse, it's Darth Vader, like big fucking hulking dude. And the best part, no fucking hypnotist. That's why
No, none.
no quick of a hypnotist. So again, I had fun with it. I think it's a fun movie.
Yeah,
Me
I
too.
agree.
Mm-hmm.
But there's
That's
no
what I
rape,
like.
Marty.
Oh, Christ. Oh, Lord.
And she's not wrong.
I feel you,
I
Marty.
don't agree with her, but she's not wrong.
No, there actually isn't, but not everything has to be forced. Hey, let's get jiggy time. Oh,
But it always enhances it if we do.
you and I have very different fucking opinions on foreplay. Oh,
Appreciate you sharing.
But yeah, for me, this was just kind of a fun one, a light-hearted take as opposed to the last one, which was very grim and dark and evil. But it wasn't something that was gonna change the whole direction of the series and make like a whole new rebooted franchise. It wasn't gonna work in that aspect, and that's probably why it was just a one shot.
Yeah.
That's probably why we move on to the next one, and why Peter Cushing returns as Baron Frankenstein and Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell.
Good title.
And we also get the David Prowse returning again as the monster in this one,
Yes.
which is really cool.
Mhm.
I actually thought it was definitely a return to form for the series. I thought it was really good, even though maybe the look of the monster wasn't quite there, but at times you could see the monster talking and his like mouth isn't even moving really because of there's so much like prosthetics on him. But I really like the story. I like I like how he was in the kind of mental sanitarium there and watching over the patients and doing his thing, using his blackmail skills once again against the guy who runs the place, giving him all the freedom to do whatever the hell he wants, basically. So yeah, I really like this one. What do you guys think, Monty?
Here it comes.
When I first saw this, and then I see the monster, I says, "Why does he look like something from the Planet of the Apes?"
Oh my God, he does.
Yep.
I like that though, Monty. I'm sure he looks like George Costanza crossed with Beastman, but he's still fucking.
He does look like
I like it.
That's actually a great analogy. This guy's like, what the?
Never thought of that.
I like
Yeah,
the
because
perspective.
even though I never saw Seinfeld. I never saw Seinfeld, but everyone talks about how hairy George Costanza is. And just by looking at that and that analogy, I can see that why. Because what the hell? I'm like, that's not Frankenstein. Who the hell thought this stuff to be Frankenstein? It's like,
it's like what cool that they're deviating into a more kind of like, this is all the shit I got to work with. Let's put it together and see what we get.
He could have picked somebody with less hair.
Hey, Marty, was he in the pool?
He was.
I was in the pool.
I don't know. I mean, Tib, Jenna, I don't think you want a man with all that hair, do you?
I mean, he was rather sweater-esque.
It just took me out the whole movie. I mean, Peter Cushing, he's fine once again. He's being an evil bastard as usual, but the monster look just took me out the whole film, And again, of course, my brother and I making jokes about it.
But I like how they injected almost a little bit of Beauty and the Beast in there. Did you guys catch that with the? Because you had Madeline Smith there being like kind of a mute girl, and she's kind of the Baron's assistant, helping him with the surgery and the experiments.
Yeah, because at first when I saw this film, I didn't know where I recognized her from. Then I realized she was in Live and Let Die.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Also, the Vampire Lovers.
Yes.
Really? I haven't seen that in ages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you recognized her from the Vampire Lovers.
You would think you would have thought I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's because she was close with the doctor that was one of the inmates there, and he ended up like getting killed off by Peter Cushing. You can look like an accident. So when they transferred his brain into the monster's body, he kept that relationship with her, and I thought that was something that was different and interesting. It's like Beauty and the Beast kind of.
Yeah.
What do you think of that about that TYTD Reviews?
So first and foremost, this unfortunately was the final outing for the Terence Fisher car crasherama.
Damn shame.
You mean you probably stopped getting in cars?
I read a little bit about him just to kind of prep for this, and all it said was between Horror of Frankenstein and this film, he had several car accidents that prevented him from driving beyond this film. This was also his final film. He was 70 when he made this. So
that's right.
Yeah,
fucking he made it to that age.
Wow.
Well, this is the thing, it's somebody clearly took his car keys off him because he lived for another like 14 years after this. So. But to be honest, this one was probably the most frustrating for me because it's got such a kernel of a great idea, which is you set a film years from Curse and Revenge, and you have old man Frankenstein trying for the final few times to get his dream realized and get his creature created, and it's interesting for Cushing because obviously Cushing wasn't very well when this film was being made, to kind of channel that lower energy and that vibe into the character to kind of make him feel a bit more weathered, to make him feel a bit more like he's lived a life, and to have the new younger Doctor come in and kind of revitalize his interest in his subjects and kind of give him that extra lease of life to complete the project, so to speak. I think is a really, really neat idea. I think it's a really well-handled film, and the thing that got me, this was made in 1974, and The Exorcist came out the year beforehand, so it looks positively throwback in terms of, sort of style and direction and cinematography.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But the good thing about that is it means that it feels so much more tonally in line with Curse and Revenge. It makes it almost like a really solid sequel to those films because it kind of manages to keep the consistency across them. To be honest, I really enjoyed this film all the way through. There was just two things that I didn't really like. One of which was I understand what they wanted to do with the creature, and I can see how with maybe more of a budget or more interesting prosthetics, they could have really brought that thing to life. Unfortunately, they just put Dave Prowse in a muscle man costume and put hair on him and then gave him a Halloween mask. Reading an interview with Dave Prowse about this, he said that it was great because the monster makeup took less than 30 minutes to put on. I was like, no.
Yeah, I could tell because they said, "Wow, I'm pretty sure they didn't take long for him to get that."
It's not good.
Yeah.
Which I like as well that they introduce. There's like a turning point in the film almost where Frankenstein goes from that kind of morally grey stuff that we're used to being genuinely morally reprehensible. The sequence towards the end where he basically says, "Oh well, the creature is unsalvageable, so let's just get him drugged and have him have his way with Angel, and then we'll raise the baby to be this new super beast." And I'm just like, you've crossed a line. That's fun.
Yeah, because that's what makes the film so it makes his character so terrible, especially at the end. Say, "Oh well, failed. Let's move on to the next one."
That was the thing. The film just sort of abruptly stops, and I'm like, "Hang on a minute! You were doing the Beast in Heat 20 minutes ago. Stop doing that. You got to give me a clean ending on that. You can't just have him go, oh well, no, not oh well."
No, the problem was the creature didn't have a happy ending. That's the issue.
I just caught that one. That was a good one.
I get you.
So yeah, I loved the film right up until the very end. I felt that. I thought them ending the film open-ended the way that they did felt a little bit shallow. It didn't really leave me feeling like I'd got the closure that I think this kind of film needed. I think the monster costume with a bit more money probably would have really, really given the film a big boost in terms of sort of audience appreciation. The only other thing I noticed was all the model shots reminded me of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. Like the shots of the village or the castle or the asylum, it was all just like made with matchsticks and like clearly just done by somebody on a weekend when they had a few cardboard boxes lying around. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was just a fun movie. The ending was a bit weird, and I didn't like the fact that they didn't close it off properly. But yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the budgetary reason why the creature looks like it did. It's just like this. It just kind of took me out the movie.
Oh, I could see that. I could see that. It pulled me a few times. I think it's like you say, the fact that his mouth doesn't even move, and that you can clearly see the join between his neck and the mask. There was a great bit I read somewhere where one of the set designers came down and he looked at Dave Prowse in the full makeup and went, "I hate this costume. It's awful. But who did the design on his feet? The feet are absolutely incredible on this monster." And Dave Prowse went, "Yep, they're mine." It's the only part of them that hadn't been done up, and they were just like, very quickly shuffled off.
Talking about what you were saying, how there were some good ideas in there. I agree. I like the idea of Frankenstein's creation kind of finally coming to fruition, where you have the genius brain and everything is working with the strong, powerful monster. It's like, wow, he's finally done it. Of course, it goes horribly wrong, but.
Yeah, that was another element I quite liked about it, really. The fact that they put all of these great elements together, but they give the character, the creature character, almost the same kind of pathos that they did with Revenge of Frankenstein, where you have a character who's got a bit more depth, and you kind of realize that just because he has all the best parts, it doesn't necessarily make him a Superman. It just makes him a very depressed individual who can no longer play the violin or do maths. He was very sad.
Yeah.
I think maybe if a couple of centuries later, if he could get his hands on the back shaver, be grand. He'd be fucking sailing. Be like, yeah, you're okay. You just need a shave and a bit of AMAC and you're fucking sorted.
Little Nair goes a long way.
Yeah.
Having turned up in a Gillette advert.
Just have him pull a 40-year-old virgin.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And finally, Jen and Velvet, your thoughts on Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, the final film in the Frankenstein saga from Hammer.
Well, I'm sure Marty likes it because, a woman is mute, can't talk no good, or can't talk at all in this film. I'm sure that's a real big, dream.
Yeah, can confirm. Marty hates women talking. Proven fact.
I like aspects of this in a weird. This is gonna sound like a weird parallel, but you know what this movie always kind of reminds me of?
Young Guns.
You're not too far off. John Wayne's The Shoot Us, because he's an old man now, right? And this new thing's coming in, and we're kind of going back into.
I guess sure.
I mean, does anyone else follow me? Or you get it, right? I'm not being funny because we're following, and he's old now and stuff, and things are changing, and this little young buck and stuff. I like aspects. I think I agree. There's kernels here that are really good. The execution could be a little bit leaves a little something to be desired. One thing though, I'm with Monty. The design really takes whatever good things there is. You just look at that and you can't take it that seriously.
You don't like
Cousin It? No.
You don't like Frankensquatch?
I dubbed it Cousin It Stein. Cousin It Stein. That's what I dub that as. I can't. There's so many good things about it, but I can't.
I love
do you
the
like
fact,
that she don't talk?
I love no. I love the fact that the fucker is covered in hair everywhere but his fucking head. That's amazing as well. Again, as I said, it's George Costanza. George Costanza by way of Beastman. That's what the fuck it is.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Although some people might want to fuck him, right? I mean,
I'm sure there's a very large, small fan base for this particular monster.
Someone wants to ride Cousin It Stein.
Rule 34 exists for a reason.
I like Velvet, Frankenstein.
What about you? Do you want to fuck Ittenstein?
No. It's fine. It's okay. This is literally the dead middle for me of the franchise. I don't think it's one of the strongest points, but I don't think it's bad at all. I think it has a lot of interesting ideas.
I like the Beauty and the Beast element.
Yeah, I do too. I like the mental asylum element. I do like the kind of transitional Frankenstein's getting older at this point, and he's kind of trying to
John Wayne.
More so, just he's trying to fucking make one great last statement or stance.
Yeah.
Before he becomes kind of irrelevant, he has this Xanadu. Xanadu is the one I kind of think of.
I think those shooters works better.
Kind of that, kind of like Gene Kelly in that movie of just wanting to make, trying accepting that time is moving on and his time is very much close to an end, but still wanting to have one final great performance, as it were.
Yeah.
I like all that stuff. Cushing's great in it. The design is terrible. Much like TYTD said, the whole thing of we're we're just gonna let him rape her and move on. That's a bit of a weird choice. Could have moved on from there. I don't, not exactly
What
crazy
else
about
are you
that.
gonna do?
I don't know. I'm not
Super
super.
baby.
Jen, do you think because he's older? Jen, do you think because he's older, that's why he made a really shitty creature that looks like Danny DeVito? Like, I've lost this. I don't have the skill no more.
I'm the trash man.
Here's fucking Danny DeVito from All of a Sudden. Hey,
I don't know. I'm still hung up on the creature in roller skates doing Xanadu now.
Nice.
Where was this movie's roller skates?
I just want Gene Kelly's role, but instead it's Peter Cushing and Xanadu. That's all I want. That's all I'm saying.
I think
So-
John Wayne would have been a great one.
John Wayne and Xanadu sounds like genuinely
No,
the
not
worst.
John Wayne and Xanadu. John Wayne and this.
Oh, yeah, that just still genuinely sounds like one of the worst ideas you've ever had.
alive, Pilgrim.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, this movie's fine. That's, I guess, the roundabout way of saying, yeah, this movie's fine. I don't have, like, super strong feelings about it one way or the other. There's stuff I like about it. There's stuff I don't like about it. It's fine. It's not the strongest way to close out the franchise.
Marty kills me.
But it's not a worse way. I'm glad it exists. I'm glad it exists.
It's alive. It's alive, Pilgrim.
Take him to the lab, Pilgrim.
So quite a ringing endorsements. I'm glad it
Everyone
just
still
wanna
has the posh British accent, and then it's just fucking southern ass shitty John Wayne.
I just want to add John Wayne doing Gene Kelly and Xanadu. No, John Wayne doing Olivia Newton-John.
Olivia Newton-John. He's the Muse.
I want to hear him singing "You Have to Believe in Magic." That's
Yes, agreed. And the moral of tonight's story, people, go watch Xanadu.
Absolutely.
oh yeah.
Did you guys get the sense that this was kind of a Pinky in the Brain ending? Because, you know, Frankenstein was kind of like, well, you know, tomorrow night we'll try again. And, you know, the couple of...
Yeah, that just hit me.
What are we going to do tomorrow?
What we going to do tonight, right? Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to destroy the world.
And have rain.
It's Pinky and the Brain.
God, now I just want a spinoff, but it's just Frankenstein and doing Pinky in the Brain type shit. I want to see Frankenstein try to take over the world through the power of country music and shit.
Oh, God, that'd be hilarious.
John Wayne.
I love that show.
That show's cute.
The one other thing I would add to this is that it's interesting, like, you've got the young guy that's kind of just starting out, like, doing the whole desecration of tombs and stealing bodies and stuff, and then you got Frankenstein at the, you know, later in life doing this thing. It's kind of an interesting dynamic of where they sit, and it kind of shows you Frankenstein's progression from one to the end. Yeah. It's actually kind of a neat, not that they knew that this was going to be the last one, but it is kind of an interesting way to end the series.
For sure.
Yeah, agreed. I quite like the transition as well between
it's almost like a protege.
Dr. Simon
reading
kind of
his book and everything, you know.
Exactly.
He kind of starts off as a fanboy and then slowly gets introduced to Frankenstein, and then he realizes, oh shit, this guy's in some fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it,
It's the heroes, kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I made a mistake.
And rape.
Enough.
John Wayne rape.
I would say,
Yeah, he probably would.
Like
I would say, you know, probably the main reason why the creature design is so bad is Hammer at this point was going down tubes, you know.
Yeah, this was
all the movies were real low budget, and the budgets are getting lower and lower, you know.
Yeah, because they were definitely being, especially that's the reason why Dracula AD was made, because they realized that the American audience's thing for horror was changing, and no one was no more into the 18th or 19th century Gothic feel anymore. So that's why they changed Dracula AD, and that's why they decided to make this one a little bit more modern. But that's the reason why Hammer just wasn't catching up with the times.
Which is why this movie fails. They should have set it in the 1970s.
Yeah, maybe they should have.
With pimps?
Yes. Again, we're going back to it. Pimp
Velvet's
Daddy
dead right.
Frankenstein.
Velvet's dead right. If that Frankenstein went in with that hairy chest to a discotheque,
Oh
he
my
would've
God.
scored no fucking bother.
That would've
No,
been
he just
hilarious.
Oh my god. No, he's just this is guys, we're missing it. This is just the origin story for fucking George the Animal Steel. That's all this is. This is just the origin story for him.
Just give him the little puppet thing that he had.
That's my headcanon. This monster fucking lives on and goes and fucking becomes a pro wrestler in the 1970s. There we go.
Yeah,
I like it.
You see him ripping open the turnbuckles.
Frankenstein WCW.
Exactly.
I'm surprised there's not.
Cushing in the corner as he's manager, just massaging his shoulders. Go get him, Tiger.
So here's a question then for you guys, actually thinking about it. If you put all of the creatures from all these various films into a Rage in the Cage match, which one do you think's winning?
Ooh.
Good question.
I think horror Frankenstein.
Horror Frankenstein.
I would say horror, probably. Honestly,
yeah. Brutal.
You'd probably just tear them limb from limb, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I reckon Revenge of Frankenstein would be the first one to go. He'd just be like punched and instantly dead.
Just crying.
The evil of Frankenstein is so freaking ugly and scary and goopy. He'd probably beat everybody up, like chase him out of the ring, but just because he's so disgusting.
No one would want to touch him. He's like, is that coronavirus? What the He's got Ebola.
Herpes.
Oh god, he's that one fucking goon from RoboCop.
Oh god,
yeah.
he kind of explodes.
Yep, the one that gets
That's in the background of Marty's video in the open.
Help me. In closing, guys, I was talking to Marty a little bit before the show, and he mentioned the Tales from Frankenstein, the series that Hammer was trying to make way back in 1959. Yeah, they actually did shoot a half-hour pilot, which you can find on YouTube, which is pretty interesting. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that could have worked, if they actually released it?
I don't know. It depends upon what type of story they would have told.
Yeah, I think it could have been interesting, honestly. Like, basically Doctor Who with Frankenstein, like different periods. That could be interesting, honestly. I don't know if it would have worked particularly well, but I think it could have been interesting at least.
You had Alfred Hitchcock Presents and a lot of others, coming right around that time. So yeah, you could, depending on how it was done.
Well,
yeah, that's something where it would have come down to how good the writing quality was.
The thing would be as well, would you be doing it as an anthology format from like other characters in that universe, their stories, or would it be like, as Triv said, Dr. Frankenstein, the end of every episode, he's like, well, I fucked up. Back to the drawing board kind of thing.
Eventually, it's just going to show how shitty of a scientist he is.
He could be like Quantum Leap, or he's
Damn
leaping
Victor,
from
you should have
monster
been
to
a dentist.
monster.
There's just a roaring building behind him, and he just sort of claps his hands, and then the end credits, the Incredible Hulk start playing as he walks off into the sunset.
It's just 50s Pinky and the Brain,
Mm-hmm.
Frankie Stein and Paul. Frankenstein and Paul. One is a genius.
The other one is Paul.
He's got a really big hat. What do you think of that? It's Frankie and Paul.
Nerd.
You see, it's Paul because it's all the different Pauls from all the other fucking Hammer movies. It's all 75 of the Pauls.
All the Dracula Pauls together, all the Frankenstein Pauls.
Yep. All the Hans together, there's like 3 Christinas.
Yep. Just got all of them together.
Yep.
It's pretty funny when you watch that episode. It's very universalist. It's pretty much the exact look of the monster in the Universal ones. It's black and white. Well, anyway, guys, that was a lot of fun. Really cool getting to talk about some Hammer Frankenstein. I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
Did too.
So
Mhm.
maybe at some point might have to do the Draculas.
True.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm looking.
Oh yes.
You know, I'm looking forward for that.
Oh yeah,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I like it.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. Love it. So very special thanks to TYTD Reviews. I think you were an excellent guest. You really know your Hammer stuff,
Awesome
and it was
guest.
really good hearing your thoughts on
Yeah.
it.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you very much for having me. It's always nice to hang with you guys in the chat. So it's been even nicer to, be able to join you guys on tonight's show. So thanks again.
Pleasure.
Yes, you have earned a reprieve from the miser for now.
Phew. It's been hanging over me for a while.
Lucky you.
I appreciate the backup, Monty.
Yeah. Luckily, because actually, the miser and the dark fate were about to team up on you, but you earned a reprieve.
Watch out now. Halloween's coming around the corner.
It
Yep.
is. It is.
Yay.
So, as Monty usually likes to do, I'm going to say TYTD Reviews. What do you got coming down the pike? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, sure. So again, thank you for having me. I upload weekly on YouTube under TYTD Reviews. I'm also on X and Twitter and all those other good places. Last week's video was a review of the film called Exorcism, which was basically what if fundamentalist Christians made The Exorcist but made it suitable for
I've
Christians?
heard of that.
Ooh,
I've heard
that
of that.
sounds awful in all the worst ways. I
Oh,
want to see it.
It's amazing. There's a scene where a guy punches a picture frame and an angel flies out and scares him down a staircase. It's incredible, and they have no curse words either. It's
Well,
like
fuck.
every nail you can possibly hit. It's incredible. This week I'm going to be covering a children's fantasy film called Merlin the Return, which was a Rick Mayall led film where he plays Merlin the Wizard. But yeah, so we've got new reviews coming every week, and I'm also on Letterboxd. But yeah, thank you again.
Cool. Absolutely.
Excellent. How about Trivenstein? What do you got going on? channel?
So I dropped Pit and the Pendulum last week. Coming up, hopefully sometime soon, is Scream Queens from 98, but it was released in 2023. It was like a 25-year gap between when it was shot and when it was brought out. It's a Linnea Quigley movie. Still working on it. Hopefully it'll be out here sometime soon. So
Very cool.
yeah.
Nice. Once again, thank you so much for creating that new intro. Absolutely
You're
love it.
welcome.
I
It
kicked
was
out.
awesome.
Well, you guys made it good. I just took your best bits and put them on together.
You didn't take Marty's, did you? His best bits. You didn't take Marty's, did you?
I took his best YouTube bits, not his best actual bits. And I gotta say, I was trying to find a place for it. God damn it, Jen, but I couldn't find a place where it worked. So
It's all right, but my intro sounds like I escaped the famine in a time machine. I hate listening to my voice.
you do great.
Oh, damn it.
Jen and Velvet. What do you got going on this month for the YouTube channel?
Well, it's Pride Month here on not just on our channel, on everywhere. And we just dropped a review of P Blockers, Alice Mayo McKay's latest one. We're going to be talking about Seed of Chucky somewhere before the end of the month, and we're also going to be talking about Love Lies Bleeding. We also have a review of The Coffee Table. It's filmed, it's edited. We'll be putting that out soon. That has nothing to do with Pride Month. It's just a really fucked up movie I wanted to see about a baby dying.
And
we also have, I'll let you.
We also have a big project that we're working on, going with a few other members of the community, just talking about like the history and some of our favorite examples and some of the worst examples of queer horror. That'll be happening towards the very end of the month with a few other wonderful people that
I get to be the token straight.
The token straight, so that's wonderful. Yeah. So that'll be happening towards probably the last week of June.
Excellent. Definitely check that out, people. Monty G, what do you got going on your channel?
Like I said, I just recently put up the review for Under Paris. Like I said before, a very interesting shark attack horror film, especially the ending. It's like they couldn't figure out what else could they do to the city
You
of
have me
Paris.
intrigued with that. You have me very intrigued.
Yes.
Yeah,
So they pull up
It-
pinks
it-
in the
it's-
brain.
yeah, it's a I would say above average, or I should say above asylum average shark attack horror film.
Very cool.
Cool.
How about you, Marty?
I done a little cool deep dive into when Ireland had too much money, so we hired the guys behind Akira to direct a beer commercial. I gotta
As you
do
do.
I gotta do a review on Steen. I really love that. And I'm reviewing the last of the action figures. This gorgeous lady here sent me a US agent. So I gotta do a review of him.
Oh, cool.
And Jurassic June, Marty. Don't forget Jurassic June.
We got Jurassic June
Ooh.
stuff to do, but I'm still sorting out. We're probably going to do a Jurassic Trash Fire before the end of the month.
Which one, like Jurassic Dead or something like that?
No, a Disney movie where you get to see full frontal of Sean Yun called Baby,
Oh my
Legend of
God.
the Lost.
That's got to be the highlight, right?
Pretty much.
Nice.
You get to see Bush. Wee.
Full frontal nudity. Da-na-na-na.
Is there a dinosaur coming out of the bush?
No,
Actually,
yes,
yeah.
yes, but not Sean Yun's.
Oh, man.
William Cat goes into both the Jungle Bush and Sean Yun's bush, but that's a whole other.
Don't you mean comes into both of those bushes, darling?
Oh,
Oh no, there goes your channel, Sean.
Not for the first time tonight.
All right, guys, that was awesome. So Hammer Horror Forever. I just want to say,
That's cool.
awesome series, great show, guys. Thank everyone for coming, and thank you for joining the Horror Hangout live stream. Till next time, folks. Peace out. Have a great night.
And stay safe out there, everyone.
Penises.
Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks everybody for joining us in the chat.
Be
tonight.
excellent to each other, I
Yes.
suppose.
Great time.
Thanks
Peace
again.
out, y'all.
Bye,
Good.
guys. Bye.
Be excellent.
All right, guys, I got to peace
Sean,
out.
Sean, no,
Sean,
Sean,
get off the street.
Sean, it's still running. He did it again.
We got to turn the live stream.
Again.
F.
We got to turn the light thing off.
Oh, what
like
else
the
can we
bus
talk
driver
about?
getting out of the
no.
bus
Well,
before it stopped.
how about that local sports team?
Oh man, the sports ball. Yeah. woo.
Yeah, huh?
I really need to see their
I'm
body.
Henry VIII. I am Henry VIII. I am. I am.
Well, I
got
hate
married
to,
the widow next door. She's been married 7 times before, and everyone
I hate
was an Henry.
to leave the sinking ship, but I gotta go, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, so do I.
Everybody
I
on
got
YouTube
There
land.
you go.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye. Monty,
And then
let's
there
just...
were 3, technically 4.
Please, for the love of God, someone tell Sean to come back and turn off the screen.
Sean, get me off this crazy thing.
TYTD, it was an absolute blast having you on, by the way.
Pleasure.
Hey, thank you again for having me on. Like I say, it's been so awesome just hanging with you guys tonight. It really has. I've not been very well this week, so you guys have really cheered me up with all this. So.
Pleasure.